guys travel in style?
One of our friends I meet, and she lives there. We all go meet up there.
New Mexico, I've never been.
Look at this guy.
Good evening. If I can call your attention, I'm going to call this meeting to order. If I can please have your attention. I know there are a lot of friends that you haven't seen, and it's great to see folks, but if we can get started. Thank you very much. Good evening. My name is David Campos, Chair of the San Francisco Democratic County Central Committee, and today I'm proud to call the meeting of Wednesday, July 25th, 2018 of the San Francisco Democratic County Central Committee to order. We will begin with roll call.
Member Alexander? Present. Member Aliotto? Here. Member Baraka? Here. Member Reed? Here. Member Campos?
Present.
Member Chan?
Present.
Member Cohen? Member Cohen? Member DeJesus? Member Duffy? Member Duffy? Member Fewer? Member Fewer? Fewer absent. Member Galata?
Here.
Member Galata here. Member Gross here. Member Gupta?
Present.
Member Francis Shea?
Here by proxy.
Member Tom Shea?
Here.
Member John? Member John? Member Kim? Did I hear a present for Member Kim? No? Okay. Member Lacroix?
Present.
Member Levitan?
Here.
Member Lowe?
Present.
Member Mahogany? Here. Member Mandelman? Member Mandelman? Member Maxwell?
Here.
Member Norton?
Here.
Member Feinstein?
Proxy. Here.
Member Pelosi? Member Spear? Member Ma?
Proxy.
Member Wiener?
Here.
Member Team?
Here.
And Member Chu?
She's waiting.
Okay, great, thank you.
Madam Secretary, if I can note that Member Pelosi is excused. And Spear, both of them are excused. Thank you. If we can now move on to item number 2, which is the approval of the meeting agenda for today's meeting. And I actually have one amendment. If you can please look at item number 8 of the agenda, which is currently both a discussion and possible action item. I'd like to amend it to make it simply a discussion item and not a possible action item. So this is item 8, which is discussion of the Violent Felony Reporting Act, a proposed local ballot measure by SFDCCC member Aliotto. Can we take that motion without objection? Without objection, the item passes and it's amended to simply be a discussion item. Colleagues, any other amendments of the agenda? Yes, Member Groff.
I would like to move that we close tonight's meeting in honor of Leah Wilson, who was killed on BART on Sunday.
Second. We can do that without objection. Without objection. Member, yes, go on.
Thanks, Chair Campos. I just wanted to note for members also item 11 is in addition to the agenda. This is a resolution opposing California State Assembly Bill 84. And so asking for that to be discussed and for action tonight.
So we have a motion by Member Galana to add item 11 to the agenda. Is there a second? Send it. Second by Member DeJesus. Colleagues, can we take that addition without objection? Without objection, the item is added to the agenda. So we have an amended agenda before you. If we can now have a motion to approve the amended agenda. Okay, so motion by Member Lacroix, second by Member Mahogany. Can we take the motion to approve the amended agenda without objection? Without objection. Thank you very much. Now we will go to item number 3, which is the approval of the meeting minutes for the meeting of June 27, 2018. Colleagues, you have the minutes of the prior meeting of the DCCC. The amendments or changes to the minutes. We can now have a motion to approve those minutes. We have a motion by Member Levitan. I'm sorry, I'm like blanking out in names today. Second by Member Mahogany. Can we take that without objection? Without objection. The minutes of the June 27, 2018 meeting are approved. We will now go to public comment, and before we go to public comment, I want to actually, I don't know if she's still in the audience, I wanted to recognize the newest member of the San Francisco elected family, Valley Brown, who was here earlier, who was just appointed to the San Francisco Board of Supervisors. Supervisor Brown, I don't know if you're here, but I was very happy that she came to visit the San Francisco Democratic Party, so I wanted to say congratulations on behalf of all of us, and I know that all of us look forward to speaking with her. With respect to public comment, public comment is one of the most important things we do as a body. We are here to represent all of you as San Francisco Democrats, and so we take this portion of the agenda very seriously, and we want to be very respectful of members of the public. And with that, I want to ask our members to please be respectful of public comment. Public comment is a time for us to hear from the public. It is not a time to debate members of the public. It is appropriate, if necessary, to ask a clarifying question. But again, a clarifying question is not a debate. And we ask members of this body that if they have a clarifying question, that they please allow the member of the public to finish their comment. And then once that comment is completed, they can ask a clarifying question. We want to be very respectful, and we know that we have some very difficult issues, important issues that are on the agenda, and my hope is that we as San Francisco Democrats can agree to disagree in a respectful way, and that we can have this respectful discourse on all those issues. I do want to turn it over to our parliamentarian, who also wanted to make a couple of points.
Thank you, Chair Campos. Yes, those are almost exactly the same notes that I had, especially considering our most recent meeting and how things got a little tense. And so I just wanted to reiterate the point that public comment, again, is an opportunity for us as County Central Committee members to hear from the public. And on that same note, so we would ask that members of this committee and also members of the audience, please allow whoever has the mic and is speaking in public comment to complete their public comment of 2 minutes, and then members of the meeting will see if you have a question. Please don't say like, hey, Chair Campos, I have a question, and you'll be recognized to ask your question. Also, for the public, we are definitely want to hear from you, and in that same thought of being respectful and civil, we ask for the same thing in return. So, name calling or anything like that, we're all up here. Thank you.
And I do know that when addressing the body, to please address your comments to the entirety of the body, not any individual member of this body. And again, I look forward to hearing from everyone. Under our rules, each member of the public has 2 minutes to speak. And so what I would ask as I call the names, if you can please line up, maybe to my left, to your right, and to, you don't necessarily have to come up in the order that I call you, but if I called you, please, just follow the individual who has finished speaking. And this is being live streamed, and so to the Democrats that are watching the San Francisco Democratic Central Committee, thank you for tuning in. And with that, we will now begin to call the names, and we have our executive director who has the time limit. So you can see the signs for okay, we have one of our amazing interns, Scott, who has the time cards letting you know when your time is up. And just for the record, I wanted to note that Mayor London Breed has sent a proxy, and we have Mawuli Tubenya, who's here, who just had a birthday. Happy birthday. Thank you for being here. Exactly, happy birthday. So let's call the names. Vivian Imperiali, Pedro Hernandez, Ann Merrill, Susan Pfeiffer, Jesus Barragan, Terry Fry, Roxanne, Trevor Martin. And this is, by the way, on any of the items that are on the agenda, this is an opportunity to hear from members of the public. So let's begin, and I'll call a few more names. The floor is yours.
Good evening. My name is Vivian Imperiali. This is the time for San Francisco to stand in contrast to ugly national actions and be the example of compassion. We must remember from whence we came. I stand before you as a first-generation American whose family escaped anti-Semitism. I stand before you as someone taught that the USA is the land of opportunity for those who fled harm for freedom. Where are we when the chair here received frightening threats for adding an agenda item? That is outrageous. Now is the time to reaffirm our pride in being a sanctuary city, rather than questioning the legislation. Now is the time to set an example for the nation that we are thankful for our lives here and are not slamming the door behind us.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hi, my name is Pedro Hernandez. I'm the Deputy Director of Fairmont, California. I'm here to invite you all to a ranked choice voting candidate training that's happening this Friday. I'm going to pass around the flyer. On the agenda is introducing ranked choice voting, what it takes to win under ranked choice voting, developing a field strategy and messaging under ranked choice voting, and in partnership with Wellstone Action. It's going to be a great training for people who are new to running campaigns and also who are experienced campaigns. We're going to have examples and samples from ranked choice voting elections from all over the country. I hope you can join us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Good evening, my name is Ann Merrill. I'm co-lead for the Swing Left San Francisco, a district captain for Sister District, and a member of the steering committee for Democracy Action. I'm here to report on a week-long event that we had earlier this month, which we called the Resist-a-thon. So it was 7 days of political activities that we put together seamlessly. It's a miracle. The leaders of the local resistance organizations all worked together happily and productively. We knew that people were going to be taking a little rest after the primaries and the local elections. We wanted to raise their energy and we wanted to recruit new members. So we did everything from register new citizens to vote. We taught people about fundraising. There are people in San Francisco who had never been to a political fundraiser before in their lives. We took people out knocking on doors. People learned to text bank. People learned to phone bank. People learned tips on running Facebook ad campaigns. We had just under 600 people participate in this. We actually would have had more, but we actually had to technically sell out some of the events because of capacity limitations in the venues that we were using. So one of the key takeaways that we have from this is there are more San Franciscans who want to get involved with these basic forms of political action than we actually have room for. You hear about the resistance organizations having lots of money, but that goes actually directly to candidates. It doesn't trickle down. So we're looking forward to working together with the DCCC to try to put together a DVC for us here in San Francisco. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you for what you're doing. I'm going to read a few more names. Former Supervisor John Avalos, Rosario Cervantes, and actually William Juarez, who wants me to read a statement when the time comes. Next speaker.
Hello, my name is Jesus Barragan. I'm a member of the Harvey Milk LGBTQ Democratic Club. And I just want to say that I think we have to be very careful. We already have back in Washington, D.C., an administration and is scapegoating immigrants, threatening sanctuary policies, and we cannot let that seep into our city. No. We just cannot do that. We are a very great city, a fine city. It's known for tolerance, acceptance. It's known for helping those less fortunate than us. And we cannot allow that kind of ideology to creep into this city of ours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, Susan Pfeiffer, and we want to thank Susan for everything she does for the party. So let's give her a big round of applause.
Thank you, David, and thank you all. I love coming to these meetings. I'm crazy. I do want to follow up a little bit on what Ann Merrill said. I also work with Democracy Action, Swing Left, Sister District. The Resist-a-thon was a huge success, something that had never been done before, and I want to see it done again. As part of that, on July 12th, we did our monthly new citizen swearing-in voter registration. Thank you, Scott, for being there. We had an overwhelming number of volunteers, probably about 65 or so for the two ceremonies, and registered a record number of 318 new citizens to vote that day. And they will be ready. Democracy Action and Swing Left will continue to hold weekend phone banks, and I want to publicly, even though she's not here, thank Mary Young for stepping up to offer us her conference room again so that we can have a Civic Center phone bank on Saturdays. That'll be starting August 4th. And then my other thing is the FDR Democratic Club of San Francisco for seniors and people with disabilities. Monday night is our annual August P. Longo Awards event, and it's to honor the anniversaries of the, the 28th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act, the ADA, and the 53rd anniversary of Medicare and Medicaid. And this year we're honoring California State Treasurer John Chiang for his work on Cal Able, which helps people with disabilities to get low-cost loans, and also CARA, the California Alliance for Retired Americans, for their work supporting Medicare and Social Security. Tickets are still available. It's Monday night at Credo. Come see me if you want information about getting a ticket to come help us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Susan Pfeiffer. Once again, thanks for everything you do. Next speaker, I'm going to read a couple more names. Jordan Davis, Paul Beller, and Corey Smith.
Hi, my name is Terry Fry. I've been a lifelong Democrat since I was old enough to vote for more than 50 years. But some of the things that have been coming out of this group regarding immigration are making me rethink that. And while I will never be a Republican, I can easily become a Green or just decline to stay. It's up to you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Trevor Martin, SF Bernie Craig, SF Democracy, 11 Den Club. I'd like to state my strong opposition to item 8, the Violent Felony Reporting Act, proposed local ballot measure. Very recently, Gavin Newsom admitted that he was indeed wrong to report young immigrants to ICE as mayor, and that he regretted it. It is my hope that no other members of this body live to regret decisions like that. I would also like to ask for your strong support for items 9 and 10. I stand in solidarity with our immigrant communities. I'm sure there's going to be many comments made on these items, no lively discussion to follow. However, I'd like to draw your attention to item number 11 and thank Member Yolanda and Henny Kelly for the timely action on this matter. Please pass a resolution opposing Assembly Bill 84. It is a disgrace and a disaster, and it seeks to destroy our democratic party process. These new legislative caucus committees would be treated like political parties, allowing them to apply contribution spending limits would only apply to contributions that the caucus committees spend on state candidates, and no limit on how much an outside source could spend. Apparently there is more transparency and reporting requirements, but the question is in exchange for what? In exchange for raising and spending unlimited amounts amounts of cash from more sources, including lobbyists and corporate entities. The disclosure requirements in AB 84 are window dressing for the real purpose of this bill, allowing caucuses to take any kind of money, including oil, tobacco, and private prison money, against California party policy and use it to back candidates regardless of the party endorsement. This is a power grab, and it has been opposed by the California Democratic Party, and I urge you to oppose AB 84. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to read a couple more names. Ellen De Silva, Sharon Johnson.
My name is Roxanne, and I'm from the hinterland down in Santa Clara County, hoping to come up here. And I'd like to take a lot of this energy and get Santa Clara County doing something. So I'm also starting Transform Foundation. We're trying to change the way that people look at transgender women and also transform the way that you look at Mother Earth. And as part of that, we're trying to hold our political office holders liable for their promises. Everybody says, yes, we support transgender women, but almost none hire us. And so it's time to stop the being in office for 100 years and have never hired a transgender woman. So I want to say that what's empowering me to get up here tonight is as of yesterday, I've had been threats the last 6 days, and I'm trying to stand up to my fucking guilt.
Thank you very much for your service. Thank you for being here. I want to welcome former Supervisor John Oblos and a former member of this body.
Good evening. I'm here to talk about items 8 through 10. It was in another lifetime, but not too long ago, that I was on the Board of Supervisors and worked twice to update our sanctuary policy in the face of enormous threats to our city and our policy, and also very similar legislation that existed in cities all across the nation. Our policy in San Francisco, I think, is one of the first ones that was established, if not the first one that was established across the nation. And it was founded on the understanding that public safety is founded on all people having equal access to the essential opportunities to thrive in life. And that true public safety is founded on trusting relationships between communities and public institutions, including law enforcement. Deportation does not increase public safety. And the dignity of the individual's right to due process is paramount to a free society. And due process is an essential component of our justice system, and all individuals, including immigrants, regardless of the charges that they face and what their past record may be, have the constitutional right to due process, the rule of law, and freedom from arbitrary law enforcement actions and decisions. This is why we updated our policy twice, in 2013 and in 2016. It was hard enough to do it in 2013, but as a city, we united to make sure that we could actually protect local immigrant communities from fear of deportation in the Secure Communities program that was established under the Bush administration and carried out under the Obama administration. But after the Pier 14 incident that resulted in the accidental killing of Kate Steinle, the whole nation was focused on San Francisco. And the presidential candidates, especially Donald Trump, have zeroed in on one immigrant as the person who was the sole responsible. There you go. Equal access to the law, so here I go.
Thank you, Supervisor. Thank you.
Good evening, Chairman Campos and members of the Democratic Club. We are living in critical times. San Francisco is a city of wealth and prosperity mixed in with poverty. Recently, the San Francisco Board of Elections opened registration for non-citizens that consist of parents, caregivers, legal guardians of children under 19 to vote in school board elections, regardless of their citizenship status. The new voter registration forms include a warning for new voters that immigration and custom enforcement will be able to access their name and address. We are all immigrants, and San Francisco is known for its sanctuary ordinance which protects their safety. Any type of change to the sanctuary ordinance is a dangerous move, especially towards the new non-citizen voters. The parents with their children want a better life and want to integrate into our society peacefully. We should do our best to protect our children who are in the system. The hate crimes are starting with the past few weeks of the defacing of our murals, and today the mural with Cesar Chavez, a leader in his own right, and he fought for the rights of immigrants. I therefore support Member De Jesus' resolution today supporting the decriminalization of immigrant communities and condemning actions by San Francisco Democratic leadership to weaken protections for the immigrant community. Trump categorizes immigrants as infestation. We can do better than this. We are not animals or terrorists, but we're human beings. Please support this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to read a few more names. Peter Lauderborn, Kevin Ortiz, and John Trasvino. Next speaker, please.
Hi, my name is Paul Beller. Thank you for the couple minutes to be here. I do appreciate it. I wanted to sort of bring our attention to an unknown position that I'm running for, the county assessor recorder. One of these esoteric positions that few people know about, let alone actually interact with, unless anybody's been married. I did want to bring our attention to this untapped resource, unbeknownst to a lot of people, that actually deals with our housing. And that's one issue that I've been working with my private business here in the city, is dealing with our housing. And I've come to know the assessor's office by working with it, and it's the most underutilized position here in San Francisco when it comes to our housing. While it can't legislate directly, it can have profound effects on our understanding of our housing. The same understanding that our supervisors use to try and craft legislation to help us out of these positions, right? So I've been working with it with on the private side with a small business over the past 8 to 9 years, and I've come to realize that this position can create change within the city, right? I've been in the homes. I've been in the homes with the Latinas who've been here for 30 years and are going through a no-fault eviction because their home, the house, is worth more money empty than it does with them living in it. Right? I've seen the communities and been a part of the communities that have been destroyed by this sudden influx of money and everybody trying to tax it. I'd like to change this. I want to be a part of the solution as I try and endeavor to convince people that this position can help. Okay? And I'd love for your time, ask me questions, stop by. You can check out my organization at votehallhall.org, right? And we can have that conversation. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Just for the record, I want to note that we have been joined by members, Supervisor Cohen, Supervisor Mandelman. Is anyone else who's coming? Thank you. Next speaker.
Hello, my name is Corey Smith. I'm the president of the United Democratic Club. I reached out earlier to Leah, and my understanding is that I'm allowed to execute my presidential privilege and basically speak during public comment without any sort of time limit, and I'm not able to speak during the item itself, so I'm going to execute that now and then pass a couple things out. Don't do yoga. That's yoga. Okay, so back in December, I was doing side planks across the street. By the way, if you're not a 24-hour member, it's yoga every day, 11 for free. It's fantastic. And then I did take care of leg. No fractures, no surgery, nothing else. It's just an injury and hopefully nothing more. So, okay, this is going to be in relation to item 6, which is going to be discussed in a minute. And I do just want to say one thing right off the bat. This has absolutely nothing to do with member Mandelman in any way. And I just want to acknowledge that. He earned his seat, and so not directed at you in any way. So, what I've passed around, I think it's probably slowly making its way over, is a few things. The first I know got brought up in last month's meeting to Senator, or a letter from Senator John Burton regarding donations from Veritas and a mail piece that kind of went out after that. I think most people in here have seen this. If you flip to the next page, this just came across my feed yesterday. There's literally a protest today at a Veritas building. I realize it's related to Costa Hawkins, but just timely, I think, more than anything else, I found that interesting. The page after that is the mail piece that Senator Burton was referring to, a front and back side copy of it. You can see endorsements on that. And then into the weeds a little bit more. So one of the things that got mentioned during the conversation was a potential violation of the Policies and Procedures Manual for the DCCC. And the top item here, so this is on page 12, it's section 7, article 7.5. The San Francisco DCCC slate card will list the ranked endorsements in order, first, second, third. Each ranked endorsement will be clearly labeled as a first, second, or third. And then the first ranked choice endorsement will appear in a larger font and a bolder face type than the second or third ranked endorsement. He doesn't ever at any point actually talk about what specifically violation was, but in reading that made sense to me. The last thing that's on here was something I reached out to Chair Campos about regarding action that the United Democratic Club had taken. So essentially this says three things. Number one, that we support and we endorse the letter. Veritas has a history of not doing a whole lot of doing some shady stuff, generally speaking. The second thing in this letter, we requested that the $10,000 not actually be returned to Veritas, but rather be donated to an organization like Larkin Street Youth, who really does work really hard to keep folks in housing. And had a conversation with Chair Campos, and he has obviously worked most of his life working to help people and to make sure people are safe and housing secure. I know he shares a lot of those same frustrations about Veritas that I did. And I understand, obviously, we're coming out of an election, and he had committed, and we were happy to work together on this to try to figure out a way we can get $10,000 and put it into Larkin Street. And so we're wholeheartedly on board with that. And then the last piece of it in here that we have is we did request that the San Francisco Democratic Party request an independent investigation from the California Democratic Party, basically about how this occurred and what exactly happened. We just want to make sure that everything was fair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Thank you so much for having me. My name is Elisa Silva. I'm a registered Democrat and a concerned citizen. So, to the San Francisco Democratic County Committee, I'm encouraging us to actually stop talking about an issue that came on the docket yesterday out of the San Francisco Supervisors Group, which is the cafeteria ban that was proposed. So the ban is proposing that no corporations within the city of San Francisco can have a corporate cafeteria for the sake of encouraging activity among local vendors. But this ban will decrease the number of jobs available to workers and exacerbate the divide of high-paid tech workers and other skilled workers around the city. Not to mention, I definitely don't think that the Democrats should be endorsing something that diminishes the number of jobs available in San Francisco. In addition, this bill will likely push companies out of the city. There's no reason these companies will stay in San Francisco, which will lead to a further decrease in the number of jobs available and the number of taxpayers who can then support those local businesses. Finally, I think we have much bigger issues. Every single person in this room is talking about something more important than this, and I think this body should pool its resources and put efforts toward much more important things than a cafeteria ban. So I implore this organization to help mitigate the ban.
Thank you very much. And I just want to note that we've been joined by Supervisor Jane Kim, Supervisor Sandy Fewer. I'm going to read a few more names. Javier Alejandro Mendoza. Oh, and of course, Director Bevan Duffy. Paige, and Assembly Member David Chu. Paige Miller, Peter Ockman. Okay, and I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. Bakul Boxta and Kay Waller. Next speaker, please.
Good evening, members. Sharon Johnson, President of the Irish American Democratic
Speaking to us.
Is that better? I think. Sharon Johnson, President of the Irish American Democratic Club. I hope to be able to participate in the discussion on item number 6, of which I am here for tonight. And listening to people speak prior to me, everybody who's standing before you is really speaking about the vulnerabilities that city and county face with their residents. And tenants are one of them. And I want to reiterate what Corey Smith said. Supervisor, congratulations. This is not about, I worked for Supervisor Sheehy during a time when we were getting a lot of phone calls in District 8, and members of the Tenderloin District 6 came by our office to talk about what was going on with Veritas and other corporate landlords. We, along with Supervisor Fuller, who had an ordinance that was about debt service and maintenance, operating expenses to protect the tenants, we decided, or the supervisor decided, to hold a hearing on the many complaints that we had heard in District 8, as well as in District 6 and in District 4, and worked with many of the community organizations that work specifically on housing issues. It was a very successful hearing. There were many legal points that were brought up by the tenants that were given to the city attorney's office to investigate as to the violations that Veritas was putting forward. It was much to my chagrin to read in the paper that Veritas had given money to the county central committee. I had the good fortune of being executive director to the county committee in 1977 through 1979, and during that time, money wasn't accepted from corporate agencies, organizations, whatever you want to call them, that are hurting the people that we are supposed to be supporting and caring about. So I am here, and you have a letter that the Irish American Democratic Club passed out. I would really like you to rethink about the money you accept, what you're going to do with the money, and resolve this issue. Because once again, I want to reiterate, the people that were here before me speaking were speaking about the vulnerabilities that the people face here. We talk about housing first in our city and county of San Francisco, and I hear supply and demand, and yet our tenants who have been in A places for 30 years, 15 years, are the ones that are getting forced out because a place like Veritas comes in and wants to make short-term corporate rentals, or they want to change the status of the building, and they know how to work around the planning department. So I hope to participate in the discussion so we can talk further about it. I was there from the beginning, that's why this letter was written, and I hope to get this resolved, and I expect a lot. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to read a couple more names. Denise Story, Gomez, I forgot, yes, and Michael Ferrantino. Next speaker, please.
Hi, Jordan Davis, just speaking for myself. I just want to say how horrendous, or how about this deplorable, that certain members of this committee have decided to put out a ballot initiative to undermine our sanctuary city. I am the granddaughter of Italian immigrants who fled Mussolini and faced a lot of prejudice, and it's horrible that someone of my ethnicity is attacking my black and brown sisters, brothers, and non-binary siblings. I have to collect my people here. I stand in strong solidarity with all our immigrant communities, and am sickened by the threats towards Sheriff Campos. And while I may not always agree with him, and I know I've come to blows with him a couple times, I have an undying respect for his story and was moved by it. No ban, no wall, sanctuary for all.
Thank you very much. We need a few more names. Oh, actually, you know what? We have a long line, so please keep coming. My apologies.
Good evening. My name is Peter Lauderdale, and I'm here in my capacity as president of the Richmond District Democratic Club. And while I have many feelings about the destructive policies and the xenophobia and hate that is bringing to the surface, while I would like to invoke the privilege as president to speak for a long amount of time, I'd like, with the chair's indulgence, to yield that time to Mr. Kevin Ortiz.
Hello everyone, my name is Kevin Ortiz. I'm a member of the Latino Democratic Club, and so I'm here to speak on this proposed ballot measure that would weaken sanctuary law. Just a little recap. So we're a city that's built on immigrants, and especially our country. We need to examine and re-examine how we treat our immigrants, especially those escaping conditions that put their lives and the lives of their loved ones in peril. I have a friend of mine that's actually part of the Latino Democratic Club that actually came here when he was 5 years old, and by the time he was 35 last year, just got his citizenship. And so that took 30 years to do. We have a system that's broken and does not allow immigrants to come in, and it's expensive. He paid $50,000 to do that. That being said, we know the statistics. We know that black and brown folks are targeted by the police at much higher rates and convicted at much higher rates. We also know that you're more likely to be killed by a white male than an immigrant, and that's a fact. So we have real structural problems with assault in our criminal justice system. Weakening a structure that protects more people than potentially harms is always something we should keep in mind. It's counterproductive to weaken this law because of a what if. Our current sanctuary city ordinance does not protect or shield violent felons. This changes to the ordinance grants due process, which is a constitutional right for all, regardless of citizenship status. Our sheriff's department already turns over undocumented felons over to ICE under the current act. This city has been a place of restorative justice. OMI, United Players, Brothers Against Guns are proof that a person can be incarcerated for a violent felony and then they can turn their life around. And domestic violence victims do not benefit from this ballot measure. Domestic violence victims are arrested more frequently than their abusers because they're more likely to leave physically noticeable damage while defending themselves. Abusers know how to leave bruises and marks that are well hidden or delayed. Under the current ordinance, San Francisco has become a safer city than it has ever been. The language also of a violent felony is not clear in this measure. When originally written, a felony charge could be falsification of documents. Also, re-entry into a country constitutes a felony. And to take away due process by reporting undocumented people to ICE for suspicion of a felony is against San Francisco values as a beacon of hope for all.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good evening, I'm John Trujillo, currently a candidate for the school board. I want to thank each and every one of you for your tremendous service to our Democratic Party and to our values as a city. Today, we are surrounded by Trump's lies and surrounded by children's cries. We must put an end to both. And the only way we can do that is to be united as Democrats. And we can do that. We should be proud of San Francisco's leadership. Leadership as a sanctuary city, leadership in defense of and the protection of immigrants and newcomers in our communities. Sanctuary ordinance, many of you have been involved with over the years, protects safety and security for all, and also overcomes San Francisco's terrible, terrible history as being the center of discrimination against immigrants. Since the 1800s, the Q ordinance, other ordinances attacking Chinese immigrants here in our city. It took San Franciscans like Wong Kim Ark, San Franciscans like Sang Lee, to go all the way to the United States Supreme Court, against all odds, against our Board of Supervisors, against our city, but they overcame. And today, the work that you have done and our supervisors have done has overcome that past anti-immigrant history of our city. So the sanctuary ordinance should be protected, it should be supported. I would urge those who want to change it to in a proposed ordinance, I would urge them to withhold and to sit back and listen to the voices in their city and try to determine what works best for safety and security. Right now we must be united in the crisis dealing with the children at the border who soon will be here in our schools and united against the lies of Donald Trump. Thank you all very much for your service.
Thank you very much. I wanted to read one of the names that signed up that I called is William Juarez, who's president of the District 11 Democratic Club, and he wanted a brief statement read on his behalf, so I'm going to do that right now. And this is from William Juarez, president of the District 11 Democratic Club. As for my public comment, hello everyone, my name is William Juarez, and I'm a clinical studies recruiter. So the best time to contact people is when they're not at work, which is why I'm working right now and cannot be there. It's a terrible shame that someone is looking for loopholes to further damage the immigrant community. This is the time to defend the immigrant community with all of our might. I oppose wholeheartedly the initiative, and I want my voice to be heard. Next speaker.
Good evening. My name is Javier Abishan Mendoza, and I'm a State Central Committee delegate from 8019, and thus as an associate member of this body have floor privilege. So please do forgive me if I go a moment over time. I feel like there's an important concept which has been lost, and I might just need to introduce people to it, which is that of erasure. There's lots of forms that discrimination takes in the United States. And one particular form that Latinos really get lumped under is erasure. It's when the census says we're Caucasian. It's when, if we raise our voice, we're shuffled off. We don't have a distinct story. We're not actually important as a people with a history. Erasure is what happens when somebody with an immigrant story tries to go to a protest or tries to raise their voice and they're deported by ICE or they're rounded up by the police. Erasure is what happens when people can't report crimes to the police because they're afraid of what happens. Erasure is what happened at our last meeting when my brother Kevin Ortiz tried to say what was important to him, what was important to us, to our story, and he was shut down by a member of this body and by many people in this audience. That is erasure. That is what happens to us when our voice is silenced, when it is said that our story is not important, and that is not acceptable. So I thank this body for hearing me out and for bringing this back into consideration because I think it is important. And I think it's more than a discussion item. It should be an action item. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm going to read a few more names. Sue Inlander, Laurel Muniz, Tammy Bryant, Janice Lee. Next speaker, please.
Hello, my name is Kay Walker. I'm a native San Franciscan and a member of SEIU since 1972, an officer, a shop steward. I'm a member of the Gray Panthers, and I do not think that Angela Aliotto's ordinance or measure is an attack on immigrants. I think it's an attack on anybody that has been committed of 3 crimes.
Be respectful of everyone. Everyone has a right to their opinion. Please continue.
That's right. And I am more on the left than any. I don't really frequent Democratic Party organizations too much because in my experience, they've done damage to the workers through measures like Prop C, which took away the COLAs of seniors. They brought in the IT tax breaks. There's a lot of things that the Democratic Party has done against the population. And I do not find them especially anti-racism. So I don't come around to see what you usually say at these meetings. But I will say this is a specific group of people, and it is not immigrants in general. I don't know why people even conflate people that commit felonies with the average immigrant. I'm going to say this about my background. I'm a granddaughter of immigrants. My grandfather was Polish. They had their whole country destroyed 3 or 4 times. There was no Pope in the times. Hey, my grandfather came in here and he worked hard and he was very law-abiding. He wouldn't have come to quibble about a law that went against felons. He might have come and kicked butt if somebody was trying to take away his status or talking about Polish immigrants as they were less than human. Please get a grip. The Democratic Party is off the rail.
Next speaker.
Hello.
You can pull it down so you can speak into it. Thank you.
My name is Paige Miller. I'm a member of the Richmond District Democratic Club. This is my first Central Committee meeting, and I'm here today to stand with our immigrant communities and voice my strong opposition to the Violent Felony Reporting Act. I'd also like to express my support for the resolutions named in agenda items 9 and 10. Now more than ever, it's time for us to stand together and uphold San Francisco values and our status as a country. Thank you.
Thank you very much and welcome. Next speaker, please. Can you pull up the mic, please?
Thank you. Thank you for your service and time. My name is Mukul. I am a longtime San Francisco resident. I'm here to speak about the Felony Reporting Act and in support of it. I, as you can all see, am obviously an immigrant. And I think the Sanctuary Law is an amazing, amazing creation designed to protect a city and its residents and make it safer for everybody so that people can cooperate with police without fear of deportation. Whether or not they're legally here or are documented, they can go to the police, report a crime against themselves, against their communities, or anybody. The Sanctuary Law allows them to do it. There is so much to be done in the city by elected officials. There was no need to go back and change this. I mean, can't you come up with original ideas that you would like to do for the sake of the city rather than read an act that's already working?
You can speak into the mic. Thank you.
I said there is so much to do in the city, there was no need to go back and change something that was already so well created by Angela Avier herself. Now it has to consider the fact that under the changed law, somebody who commits a murder or a rape in the city and is undocumented, the police are not allowed to look up that person's previous crimes in other states. That is a privilege that is not available to those who are legally here or who have papers, or to the citizens themselves. If a citizen does a crime and has previous rapes, murders, whatever in another city, another state, that will be found out and that person will be prosecuted, but not an illegal person. And that is just bonkers. I think this is a very good way. We need to remove these three wrong felonies from this and make the whole city safer for everybody, including.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker, please. Thank you. And by the way, I do want to correct myself. I previously acknowledged Supervisor Malia Cohen when it should have been Board of Supervisors President Malia Cohen. So I stand corrected on the president. I actually think that we did congratulate you at the last meeting on that. So thank you. Next speaker.
Good afternoon, Central Committee. Thank you for your time and consideration. My name is Ted Brookman. I'm an immigrant to the United States who received his citizenship in 1997. I'm here to speak about item 8. Item 8, in my opinion, begins to create a correction, an ability for immigrants to feel safer here in the city and in the state as well. At this current time, the San Francisco Sanctuary Law it protects everybody and then some. As it stands right now, there are over 700 different types of felonies that do not get reported. However, as the current California state stands, there are barely any felonies that are accepted. And that bill was authored by current Senate candidate Bill Youngs. And in my opinion, Ms. Aliota's ballot initiative goes far enough to help protect the immigrant communities and help support those that are trying to get and stay on the citizen track. Thank you, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you. I'm going to read a few more names. Brad Champin, Gilbert Canepo, Jackie Miller, Andrew Michael, Larry Pisani. Next speaker. Sorry I messed up.
No worries. Thank you, Chairperson Campos and the rest of DCCC. My name is Carla Gomez Santiago. I'm a former policy advocate with the Northern California Coalition for Immigrant Rights, one of the organizations that pushed and organized for the sanctuary policy that was passed over 20 years ago. It was a model, and is the model for over 200 different cities and local jurisdictions. As it is, it was thoughtfully developed, organized for. One of our core constituencies were domestic violence survivors through our program at the time, Mujeres Unidas y Activas. who partnered with then Representative Biden to moreover push for protections for domestic violence survivors through VAWA, the Violence Against Women Act. All these folks were part of that initial law, and it has been improved. What folks need to remember is that the rhetoric that we're facing today makes our communities susceptible to violent crimes onto us.
Is everyone okay?
Due process is the issue here. This current policy does not protect felons. Due process is what's important. There's over 200 different statuses that exist that are called PRUCALs, people residing under the color of law. They're precarious. Anything can happen, anything can change. People who were once legal can be undocumented. TPS, temporary protective status, is an example. Our communities are being targeted, and you are the leaders in this country that are showing us the way. Don't forget that. Don't forget that.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Thank you, Chairman, and everyone here for giving me a voice. My name is Mike Ferrantino, and I'm a real estate broker here in the city. And I'm here to talk about the Felony Reporting Act. We're talking about 3 items: murder, mayhem, and rape. Mayhem is when you chop someone up. Rape includes child rape, molestation. Those 3 violent felonies. The distinction between the state of California and the city of San Francisco is that in the state of California, they're hardly protecting any felonies, if at all. In the city of San Francisco, I think it's 31 or 32 felonies that then break down into sub-felonies, which equal somewhere around 700 or 800 felonies that we're protecting. All we want to take out is 3. That's it. And I think there should be some kind of relationship between the state law and the city law. Although I'm very proud of San Francisco for adding all the rest of the felonies, because sometimes things just aren't clear when it comes to what ICE does, and I agree, ICE should be abolished or severely changed, because when you see what they do, it's kind of ridiculous. But the main point is that the change to the law that we're proposing protects not only the immigrant community, but the rest of us. They are very simple changes. That's it. Thank you for your time giving me a voice.
Thank you very much. Next speaker. Come on up.
Hello, everyone. Hello. Who here is an immigrant? Raise your hand. Who here is a child of an immigrant? Who here is a grandchild of an immigrant? Thank you. My name is Janice Lee, and I was born in Hong Kong in 1987. What I want you to all know and see and feel is that we, immigrants, are here to stay. This question of immigration is an existential question of what kind of city San Francisco is and what kind of country the United States is. Are we going to be a city that attacks its own? Our politics, look around this room, is already cannibalistic enough. We don't need to do it even more. Rejecting Alioto's ballot measure will be a statement to her and to Trump's rhetoric that she so closely mimics and scares the heck out of me. This is my first time that I've ever come to a DCCC meeting, and I still have to say I've never felt safe coming here, and I still don't even really feel safe standing here right now. But I know that silence is consent, and as an immigrant, and as a San Francisco resident, and as a member of the Democratic Party, I will not remain silent and complicit to the racist and xenophobic world Ms. Alioto so eagerly is leading us towards. Thank you.
Lila Carrillo, Carlos Bocanegra.
Good evening, my name is Denise Story.
Speak up, please.
Hello.
If we can have order, please. Everyone to speak, if we can respect the speakers. Go ahead. Can we reset the time, please? Thank you. The time has been reset.
My name's Denise Story.
You can speak into the mic, please.
Hi, my name's Denise Story, and I'm president of the Central City Democrats and a member of Access of Love and the Harvey Milk Club. And we all those clubs, we stand with sanctuary city policy as it is, and we thank David Campos for his work with the sanctuary city policy. My grandparents from Norway escaped German aggression in the First World War and came to work on farms in Chicago. So if Democrats want to keep winning elections, we can't be sounding like a party of intolerance. And we can't hijack the progressive dialogue, which happens all too often with a lot of issues, and this is a big one. And so the meaning of liberalism is a political and moral philosophy based on liberty, equity, and civil rights, and strength and diversity. So we say that the Central City Democrats, the Harvey Milk Club, and Access to Love, we say no ban, no wall, and no gang injunctions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, and we see Susan Inglegood. Glad to see you standing and out of the hospital.
Thanks for all this Facebook encouragement. And I hope you're going to encourage me tonight. I stand before, I realized this as I was walking to the mic, one of the most diverse DCCCs, that I have ever seen. This is wonderful. And the DCCC, should represent all of the elements in our community. I really am feeling like, with the Sanctuary City, we went 2 steps forward, and it feels like this must be the 1 step back. It's really beneath us to even be considering this measure that is not even a wolf in sheep's clothing. It is so bold and flagrant. It waffles on one of our principal issues of this city that we have nurtured for the past 50 years, because really the last 50 years has been a game changer for us as an immigrant community. We have been both an immigrant city and an anti-immigrant city, and those histories track each other. And this resolution that will go on the ballot, that may go on the ballot, is just a foot in the door to many other abuses on various communities that are vulnerable in the city, just like Sit Line, just like Care Not Cash. The criminalization of immigrants creates a label that follows those folks forever. It is not enough to just oppose this measure, and I applaud you for Resolution 10. We must oppose this nativist and poisonous measure and keep San Francisco, San Francisco. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Next speaker.
Hi, my name is Gilbert Canelo. That's a British and a Spanish surname. I don't identify with either, and I identify as a Native American. I'm an Apache. My tribe didn't sign any treaties with the U.S. government or the white man, whatever you refer to the U.S. government. So therefore, we're not recognized. Our tribe is not recognized as a Native American tribe. So this has been going on long before Trump. All right, my dad, he came from Spain 50 years after Columbus. They settled and founded Corpus Christi and San Antonio. Okay? So anyway, I'm for immigrants because we're all immigrants. My ancestors from my mother's side been here for thousands of years. My cousins live in Northern California. They're a different tribe. You'll find Apaches all throughout the prairies, through the Southwest. Some even migrated down to Mexico. There's a tribe that lives on the border that migrates both ways. In the Rio Grande, they have dual citizenship because That's what they had. Their land ended up being on both sides of the border, on Mexico and the United States. The river also changed all the time. But anyway, we're all immigrants and we need to respect each other as human beings. We're all on this earth together. Now, if I have enough time, I'll share some information that I received. Donald J. Trump already tried to launch the nukes. General Maddox stopped him. You know, the general that was fired because Trump didn't want general telling him what to do. Well, anyway, General Maddox told him, no, you cannot launch the missiles against China and North Korea because the radiation, even if they don't fire back, you know, John Bolton says, you know, he thinks that we hit them hard enough that they won't be able to respond.
Thank you very much.
All right, well, you won't be able to hear the rest of the story.
Thank you.
Anyway, General Maddox stopped the launch of the missiles.
Thank you, Gilbert. Next speaker, please.
Hello, my name is Brad Chapin. I'm on the board of the Harveyville Democratic Club, and I also live with Harry Britt and take care of him. He's not doing very well, so I ask you to, you know, don't keep him in your prayers because he's an atheist, but Harry goes back with Angela. They were on the board together, and Angela, I wish I could defend you right now, and I'm really, really disappointed. And the reality is that a lot of people, I feel like, aren't talking about the facts and how they're being muddied. So this isn't a conversation about protecting immigrants or protecting citizens. This is a conversation about making sure that immigrants are punished harsher than non-immigrants for the same crimes. And the current sanctuary city policy actually already does that. If someone is arrested for certain crimes, they can be turned over to ICE. But suspected criminals, in what I read, a police officer can suspect, or someone can suspect that someone's a criminal, a violent criminal, and they can be treated differently. That's not okay. Thing I appreciate about Harry is that he's really intelligent, and I think that if he was working with you right now, he would have been able to convince you, like he did a lot of other things, that this is ridiculous and it's an attention stunt that's not worth it. It's not okay to divide communities in San Francisco. The good thing here is usually we're just talking about real estate versus...
You can address the comments to the entire body.
We are usually divided by real estate interests and money corrupting the Democratic Party versus who are pro-gay and supposedly pro people of color. Versus progressive groups that can still do better. But we don't, there's no reason to introduce Trumpian bullshit. Harry would be ashamed, Harvey would be ashamed.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm going to read a couple more names. Diane, Shannon, and Mona Cruz. Next speaker, please.
Hi, good evening, DCCC. I want to thank all of you for your service and just make this, I'll just get to the point. I feel like it's pretty obvious there's a lot of...
If we can, hold on please, if we can stop the clock, we can stop the side conversations just because we need to be respectful of the public members who are speaking, just like we were respectful when you spoke. So if you can please do that. If we can please stop the side conversations. If we can reset the time, please, so that we can give this gentleman his time. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Chair Campos. That's actually what I wanted to address is that I feel like right now is the time for us to really set the example, to create thought-provoking discourse and not operate from a place of fear as the carrot. I really think that it's pretty obvious right now there's so much tension in here. I think that we need to focus on having open discussions that are fearless and that are productive, because at the end of the day, all of us are Democrats. Now, more than ever, we need to set the example that we can go high, that we stick to the issues, and that we do not make any of our disagreements and our internal friction personal. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Good evening. My name is Laurel Denise. I'm a board member of the Bernal Heights Democratic Club and a proud member of the San Francisco Latino Democratic Club. We are living in scary times. The current man in the White House is doing everything he can to strip us of our rights. As a naturalized citizen, today, there's 20 million of us. We're under investigation right now. These are super scary times. We can't afford to change our sanctuary law. We need to stand strong. Our current sanctuary city ordinance does not protect or shield violent felons. The changes to the ordinance grants due process, which is a constitutional right for all, regardless of their immigration status. Let's stand strong. Let's protect our sanctuary city. Let's stand with our immigrants. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
My name is Tammy Bryan. I'm a member of Latino Democratic Club, and I'm here to speak. I'm the great-granddaughter of Jewish immigrants, but I'm here to speak to oppose the ballot measure and the changes that are being proposed. I want to remind this body, and especially the author, that this has real consequences for real people. And though I don't do stuff that's about me, I'm going to make it about me for a minute, like for my own daughter, and how worried I am right now. She got news that her grandmother is sick in El Salvador, and now she's going to head there to visit her. And I am petrified, and I am distraught, because it is incredibly dangerous down there for her. And so these are the consequences of our U.S. policy and our deportation policy. Let's remember that it was this government and these U.S. corporations that are responsible for the violence that people are fleeing. This is not in a vacuum. This is our responsibility that people came here in the first place. Let's remember, in the 80s, people were fleeing U.S.-sponsored poverty and war. And so that's what brought a wave of folks here. Now, some of them, they had their children, and while the parents were struggling and working many jobs just to survive, those children did get into trouble. But they were criminalized, they were trained to be truly dangerous criminals, and then we would deport them. So rather than rehabilitate them, and we know from, as was mentioned before, groups like HOME, United Players, and Brothers Against Guns, that people can be incarcerated and can be rehabilitated, and that's what should have been our focus. So the whole criminalization of people is our government's fault. We broke it. We need to fix it. And I'm also extremely concerned when there are posts on Facebook that end up putting somebody's life in jeopardy. And I think people have to be more mindful of what they do and what they say. There's real life consequences. I'm here supporting David Campos, and I'm very, very upset that he was being threatened because of these posts. And I think people need to take more responsibility. Thank you
very much. Next speaker, please. You can lift the mic and speak into it, please. Maybe someone can help them. Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Speak into it, please.
I want to thank you for your service on the DCCC, and I also want to thank Angela for your love of true sanctuary for immigrants and for all of us. So the first thing I would ask for all of us as Democrats is to read the ordinance. Number one, and it's the title of the ordinance. Read the ordinance and not just listen to a bunch of rhetoric. I mean, I could stand up here and put my earphones and learn as much as listening to people, because it's a lot of rhetoric. I don't mind talking to anybody about the issue and having a conversation, but I'm sick of hearing the rhetoric. So anyway, the title of it is Violent Felons Reporting Act. It applies only to felons convicted, violent felons convicted of rape, murder, and mayhem. There are about 797 other felons that are exempted from the sanctuary city ordinance, so they can still commit their felons and stay there. But anyway, it's a common sense thing that we can do. And compared to the state's sanctuary city, which has
There's 35 felons that are exempt. We have 800. That's interesting. Anyway, I urge you to read and support. Vote yes to report violent felons in sanctuary. Be pro-immigrant and be pro-true sanctuary and safety.
Thank you. Next speaker. Next speaker, please. I'm going to read a couple more names. Nathaniel Owen, Carolina Morales.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Lila Carrillo. I am the president of the Latino Democratic Club. And I am very excited that we are very well represented here by both members of the Latino Democratic Club and true allies to the immigrant community. I'm going to state a bit of the obvious, which is that hate, ignorance, fear is contagious. I stand here against, obviously, the poking holes in our current sanctuary city ordinance. This is not about, I do not believe that this is about violent crimes. This is scapegoating at its best. This is monetizing scapegoating and politicizing scapegoating at its best. We cannot take the national rhetoric that has been rampant since the beginning, calling specifically Mexicans rapists and murderers, and take that lightly, and say that somehow this does not mimic that or it doesn't piggyback on that. I am an immigrant myself. I am the daughter of an immigrant. We were not always immigrants. This land was stolen from us. So you cannot all of a sudden purport to say that you stand here with us, that you recognize history, and you should recognize history, and call yourself progressive or call yourself Democrat when you are singling out an already vulnerable community. So I appreciate and I thank very much the leadership in this room who has stood behind those who are being targeted, behind the vulnerable communities, and to really provide the sanctuary that we need. One case, two cases do not validate going after an entire community and an entire population.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please. Next speaker. Thank you. Come on.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Carlos Bocanegra, and I work for Mission Neighborhood Centers, and I've come today simply to speak and acknowledge that we're living under an administration of bigotry. We're living under an administration of ignorance. We're living under an administration of division. We live under an administration that seeks to utilize and instill fear as a vehicle to carry out their own selfish and self-centered agenda. So the question becomes, how should we respond to such tactics, to such fear? Well, I don't have the time to give you my whole answer. I do have enough time to say that our response to fear should not be met with more fear. Our response to fear should not be to persecute marginalized communities, especially communities already struggling to keep their housing, feed their children, and provide them with the opportunities they only used to dream about. Our response to fear should be to protect first those in our community most vulnerable under the age of Trump. Our response to fear should be courage. To find the courage within ourselves, to support and empower the courage that in each other, and to stand united in support of our communities. To stand united to support our immigrant brothers and sisters. To stand united and protect the sanctuary laws we currently have, and not the ones that would seek to diminish the communities that are the fabric of San Francisco as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Edwin Carmona Cruz. I'm here with the Free SF Coalition, the coalition that was responsible for the due process in 2013 and the updated version in 2016. So at the time where the Abolish ICE movement has gained traction, a movement that was spearheaded by the undocumented community and that all of you are talking about now, is a movement that focuses on the horrendous detention conditions that these immigrants are subjected to. A movement that promotes the end of the inhumane treatment of our neighbors and calls for the end of family separations. That we have come here and addressed this anti-sanctuary measure that feeds directly into this deportation machine. I'm going to talk to you today about Sonia. And again, this rhetoric that folks are talking about, we often forget the humanization of the people who are affected by this. So Sonia is a Delhi resident, a single mother of 4. She, at 14, was then, by her father, arranged a marriage with an older man. And she endured over 20 years of domestic violence and sexual assault by her husband, her brother-in-law, and other men in her life. But Sonia, because she didn't have support or family in the United States, she was then charged with 2 misdemeanor DUIs. She reported to court and jail something voluntary. She served 2 weeks, and criminal justice system said, you know what, you're not a danger to society, you need help, you need treatment, and they let her go. And then, ICE picked her up immediately. This was before the implementation of SB 54. And this was the California Values Act. This administration, ICE and its anti-sanctuary proposition is making survivors like Sonia pay double time in cages for the trauma that has been imposed on their lives for over 20 years. ICE is not just separating families at the border. ICE and this xenophobic legislation is separating families here in our city. And this needs to end. So I urge this body to stand up and put a stop to it.
Thank you very much. I'm going to read a couple more names. Bridget Damila, Olam Visual, Kitsia Esteva, Susan Harfeld, Gabriela Lopez. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Jackie Miller, and I've been a resident in San Francisco since 1991, and I'm here today to support the ordinance that Angela Alioto is proposing. I really want to call attention to something that seems to be being overlooked, and that is, what about the rights of the victims? What about the peace of mind and the sense of security and a sense of being protected by our beautiful city of San Francisco? I don't know if there's anyone in this room that has ever experienced the horrible act of rape and being raped. But so I just want to say that I myself am a victim of rape. And rapists don't stop raping. Rapists tend to rape again and again and again. So the sense of terror and trauma that's being imposed on people in our community that have been the victims of rape is really not fair here either. So I think that we could come to a very good, peaceful, harmonious resolution by doing something that helps the victims and protects them and the families, as well as our wonderful immigrants. And this is not a thing against immigrants. It's simply about protecting people in our community. Thank you.
Next speaker. Next speaker, please.
Hi, my name is Bridget Davila. Can you hear me? And I'm here, I'm a member of the Latino Democratic Club and also the District 11 Democratic Club. And I'm also on the City College Board of Trustees. So and I'm having a lot of fun being on the other side of public comment. So, but I want to say a couple of things that haven't been said. So first of all, I think it's been very eloquently put that we do not need another sanctuary law here, that this will do nothing to protect us from rapists, murderers, or anybody else. And I think that's been very eloquently put already. but I would like to also put a face on this. And in my classes that I teach at San Francisco State University, I often have students of color, mostly male students, who have been convicted of a crime that could destroy their entire lives. And they end up going to school through the rebound program and graduating. What happens here is that black and brown people are criminalized. And this is just another way to do it. And I can't even believe that San Francisco is dealing with this when we have so many other things to deal with here. My students and their rent, for example. Why are we talking about this now? This does nothing to give us extra protections. And I just wanted to go on record saying that.
Thank you very much. Next speaker.
Hi everyone.
You can speak into the mic.
So I'm part of I'm the secretary of the Latino Democratic Club and also youth commissioner appointed to District 11. And I was here to talk about item 10, which I myself and Rosario and Patrick de Jesus worked on. But I am so outrageously disgusted right now. I am so disgusted with everything that's going on. Rhetoric after rhetoric. We keep repeating the same not even facts, same dichotomy of which has already been disproven time and time again by people in this room who have professions and dedicated to their lives to solving these issues, to bringing communities together to solve the issues within the immigrant community and our communities in San Francisco, but yet their voices aren't being seen as human. Their voices aren't being recognized. We need to have a dialogue. We need to talk. I mean, if we don't, I want everyone in this room to really understand what a person of color who is a son of immigrants or who is an immigrant themselves go through. I have trauma from fearing that my parents will be deported. I have trauma of seeing other families being divided in San Francisco during Gavin Newsom's mayoral term. I have suffered abuse after abuse, seeing my dad being discriminated by people because we're brown and because our parents are immigrants. I am tired. All of us are tired. Please try to freaking understand where we're coming from. We're not here. I did not choose to be in politics. I knew I had to be in politics so that I could be a voice to youth and to the immigrant community, to the Latino community. Because I knew that if anyone had to do it, it had to be me. It had to be all of us here. We didn't choose to be in politics. Politics chose us because our black and brown people have been discriminated over and over again. Over and over again. We decided to be here so we can voice our opinions.
Thank you very much.
I'm really nervous.
You're doing great. Take a deep breath.
I'm Malaya. I'm a student here in SF. I just wanted to say something really quick. I'm 13 years old, and I know that treating immigrants differently from other people is just messed up and racist. The people who are pushing, they should be ashamed of themselves. You should be ashamed of yourself.
If you can address the entire
Oh,
body,
yeah, sorry.
not one individual, all of us, please.
Yeah, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thanks, teacher. I know it's hard for our youth to come and speak, but we want to hear from you. Next speaker, please. Thank you.
Hi, it is hard. Hi, David. Thank all of you for your service here. I know it's tough, but you do a great job, and it's really appreciated. My name is Susan Fulsfall, and I want to stand in support of three sisters tonight who are addressing us. Angela Alioto and her initiative that she's bravely put forward for the ballot. Sharon Johnson, who has toiled long for the Democratic Party. And Jackie Miller, who spoke a moment ago, who you should know, is the producer of the documentary film The Hunting Ground that ran on CNN, was nominated for an Emmy about university campus rape. I'd like to address item 6, because I feel that this body is divided, unfortunately, by what appeared to be a pay-to-play situation with your slate card. Everybody knows what the scenario was, so I'm not going to repeat it. The public needs answers, Democrats need answers, everybody needs answers. Who designed the DCCC District 8 slate card, which included only one endorsee, not vote? Who okayed the acceptance of the $10,000 contribution from a real estate giant who is abusing renters and was in the middle of being questioned on its business practices at the Board of Supervisors by the very supervisorial candidate who was not mentioned on the slate cards? Who approved the slate card? Will the DCCC please ask for an independent investigation by the state FPPC and the San Francisco Ethics Commission? Thank you for your attention.
I'm going to read a couple more names. Reed Chalker, Rafael Trujillo, Lee Lovett.
Good evening. My name is Diane Shannon, and I'm a native of San Francisco and a resident in the Mission District. And I'm speaking in support of the Violent Felony Reporting Act. I have neighbors who are undocumented immigrants who are very good people, and I think they should be on the path to citizenship. They're here for better opportunity, some escaping a violent society. The current local law creates the impression that San Francisco is okay with a violent society by protecting undocumented felons. San Francisco is perpetuating the myth being spread by the current administration in Washington that all undocumented immigrants are the same, murderers and rapists. And San Francisco needs to distinguish the difference between the good citizens and those who are violent felons by amending the sanctuary city law to more closely mirror California law, which imposes reasonable limits. This is essential for protection and safety of all of its residents, legal and undocumented residents alike. So I thank you for the opportunity to speak openly and allow fair discussion of this issue.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good evening, members of the Democratic Party. My name is A.J. Thomas, and I'm not here on behalf of any organizations tonight. I came here tonight to fall out of a chair.
So if you're okay.
And also speak out on behalf of, I believe it's item 9, the resolution in support of calling for the abolishment of U.S. immigration and customs enforcement. I'm sure everybody here is familiar with ICE and is very familiar with the abhorrent practices of the organization over the last few years, especially since the new president came into office. These disgusting practices of hunting down undocumented residents have resulted in many calling it a deportation force. Senator Kirsten Gillibrand of New York has called for the abolishment of ICE, has called to start over and build something that actually works. Senator Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts has stated that we need to rebuild our immigration system from top to bottom, starting by replacing ICE with something that reflects our values. And our own senator from California, Kamala Harris, has stated that there's no question that we've got to critically re-examine ICE and its role and the way that it's being administered and the work it's doing, and we need to probably think about starting from scratch. It's clear that ICE is broken, it does not work, and it probably never worked. It is important not only to stand with the leaders of our party in calling for the dissolution of ICE, but also standing with the weakest among us, the residents of San Francisco who are undocumented and are relying on this party to act. So I would encourage everybody here to vote in favor of resolution item number 9. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Be careful. Next speaker.
Hi, my name is Nathaniel Owen. I am a member of the Harvey Milk LGBT Democratic Club. I'm coming to give public comment in opposition to Member Aliotto's proposed measure that would water down sanctuary city in our city. Frankly, we all know that this was simply a cynical measure that was introduced in the middle of a desperate mayoral campaign to gin up attention, to gin up conservative votes in our city, and to gain attention nationwide and money. How do we know that it was cynical? She used Trumpian language like the existing sanctuary city ordinance is a magnet for felons across America to come to the safe shores of our city. It makes San Francisco a more violent and unsafe city. She has no data behind this. We all know this. We all know that it's cynical. So my question is, how do we hold someone accountable who is an elected member of our party, who goes on Fox News, a Republican propaganda machine, and spouts off Trumpian rhetoric that instills fear into our neighbors, our friends, our family members, ourselves? Our party has to actually stand for something. We have to hold people accountable who not just call themselves Democrats, but are actually elected members of our party. We have to hold each other accountable. We can't let someone skate by simply because of the name that they were born with, or the privilege that they espouse, or how easily they can punch down during an electoral campaign, because that's what politicians do. We must hold our party leaders accountable. I plead with you that you do so. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Carolina Morales. I am the co-president of the Harvey Milk Democratic Club, and I'm going to be exercising my presidential privilege for your pleasure. So I am here today to oppose any elected official or politician who uses xenophobic rhetoric to try to get media attention and manipulate voters, and on top of it, to try to call themselves a Democrat. So nobody who calls themselves a Democrat should ever use Trumpian language and tactics, because these tactics are racist and manipulative, and they only hurt our most vulnerable and only promote violence and discrimination, which clearly we've seen both from last DCCC meeting and this meeting. So the Democratic Party has been failing people of color and immigrants for decades, from criminalizing youth of color, increasing deportations, and cutting our basic social services. With Trump's electoral college win and subsequent takeover of the White House, many disenfranchised and diverse communities, including young people and people of color, are saying enough is enough. And we are getting engaged in politics. That's why Kimberly Alvarenga, daughter of a Central American domestic worker immigrant to this country, and I decided to run as co-presidents of the Harvey Milk Club last year.
Yeah!
And I am the first club president who is an immigrant. Queer immigrant, to be exact. The Harvey Milk Democratic Club and the city have really been making great efforts since Trump won to lead a progressive fight, a true fight for justice against Trump. So it is unacceptable that any member of this body would join Trump in his disgusting and racist tirade against immigrants. Using one or two sensationalist examples to qualify an entire community is shameful and in opposition of San Francisco's values. Why do I care so much about this issue? Because as I said, I am an immigrant. I am an immigrant from Latin America, and I have been in the US for almost 20 years. I am now documented, which feels like a lot of privilege. Having citizenship today under the Trump administration is having a lot of privilege. So I try to really use my privilege when I can to raise the voices of all of my amazing brothers and sisters in the community. But I wasn't always documented. I was a domestic worker for 8 years. I worked at a restaurant for 4 years. I've done low-wage labor, and I have been in fear. Somebody here before me spoke about being raped, and if we knew what it felt like to be raped. I know what that feels like because I was raped when I was undocumented. And I was not able to tell anybody except my City College of San Francisco therapist. I did not feel I could go to the police. Why? Because of this kind of rhetoric, because of this kind of language that makes it so that immigrants feel like we do not belong, like rights are not for us, even though it is my understanding that we have rights under the US Constitution because we're on this soil, right? For all the people that talk about freedom and defending the freedom of this country, that's what you're supposed to be defending, right? Defending the fact that when people come here, people are supposed to be free, people are supposed to not feel persecuted. And that's what this is doing. Making people feel like we do not belong, like we shouldn't be here. And it's not okay to promote like more white supremacy. It's not okay. Whether you all are conscious or not, the fact that you're standing here as people of European descent, as white folks, talking about how you're making it safer for immigrants, when you do not, even if for the one human being that was here that said that he is an immigrant too, being an immigrant of European descent is not the same as being an African or Latin American immigrant. It is not the same thing. So if you really care about safety, if you really care about San Francisco and you call yourselves a Democrat, you have to stop using this kind of rhetoric and language, because we will not be silent. We will continue to come out. If any of your family members decide to run for office under the same platform, your friends, your colleagues, whoever it is, we're going to be here and say, no, enough is enough. This is not Trumplandia, okay? This is San Francisco. And I will continue my beautiful long speech. So, for the person who talked about tension and friction, and how we need to address the tension and friction. This is not tension and friction. This is a fight for justice. This is the difference between standing for oppression and hate and standing for justice. And if you want to minimize that and call it tension, you're wrong. This is not tension. This is people standing for each other and rising up for what is right. In terms of domestic violence in this city, I met Supervisor David Campos when, in 2008, when we started defending the due process for youth issue because of former Mayor Gavin Newsom, who decided to start deporting kids under 18. Imagine 13-year-old kids getting sent back to countries they didn't even remember. So, after the due process for youth, we moved on to defending the due process for adults. In those days is when I was spending my decade-long working at Community United Against Violence, which is the only LGBT organization in the city that focuses on domestic violence and sexual assault and street harassment. The core of our work is precisely domestic violence. We really led the charge against any kind of carve-out that's around domestic violence. Why? Precisely because domestic violence survivors, whether they're immigrants or not, let me tell you, whether they're immigrants or not, they do not feel comfortable going to the police, because many times they're not believed, particularly if they're women, if they're transgender folks, if they're folks of color, or if they're queer people. And so it is important to not use domestic violence, which is incredibly, incredibly horrendous and heinous. Is that, somebody correct me in my English? Heinous. Thank you. Heinous crime. this only makes our domestic violence survivors and sexual assault survivors feel more scared to come forward, because it only creates more and more barriers for people. And lastly, I want to thank any member of this body who is in support of our immigrant community and who would speak up against this ballot measure. And I thank you in advance, and I am hoping that all of you stand against any attempts of advancement of this ballot measure by this member who authored this ballot measure. And I am naively hoping that this author steps back and actually tries to make an effort to work with the communities who are impacted by this and to really learn what is it that they need. Because the federal government is coming for all of us immigrants, even those of us who are naturalized folks who have green cards, which means permanent residency in this country, who are documented, are already getting deported. And they have already started to speak about what would it mean to increase the number of reasons why naturalized citizens could get their naturalization revoked and get deported. So this is not a drill, this is the real deal. Let's really stand together and let's actually lead the national fight against Trump and not move backwards.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Kitsi Esteva. I am undocumented. My family is also here undocumented, and that is a very particularly vulnerable thing to say, given the conditions that we're in right now. It's very particularly vulnerable to say when I know that Adolfo Delgado, less than 5 months ago, got killed by the police after his body was ridden by 50 bullets because he was afraid. Because he was afraid he would be deported. And that's when we still have due process in San Francisco. It's extremely vulnerable when Trumpist rhetoric has emboldened people to kill people at BART stations. It's extremely vulnerable when we know that Black immigrants are the largest community that is being deported in this country. I want to understand why, in this particular moment, there's a particular member of this group that decides to espouse hateful rhetoric coming from the Trump's administration right into our home, when in 2016 we already said no to that. When in 2016 my nephew, who's now dead, was harassed by Trump supporters at the Board of Supervisors simply for having a jacket that said Mexico in it. My nephew, Jesus Lona Esteva, was undocumented as well, and he's here to honor him. A youth who had cancer and Down syndrome, who was harassed by Trump supporters when we were trying to say due process for everyone. Due process for everyone, because that's what keeps us safe. In this community, we want safety for everyone. We want to espouse justice for everyone, and we want to understand very clearly
Thank you very much.
that we're not a community that is about throwing some people away because this is double punishment.
Thank you very much. Next speaker.
Thank you for being here and for listening to me speak. My name is Gabriela Lopez. I am the daughter of hardworking Mexican immigrants. I am on the board of the Latino Democratic Club, and I am also a public school teacher in San Francisco. Like many have mentioned, San Francisco sets examples for this country that show we welcome and support all people. When I think about the students I teach and the messages they are constantly receiving, I can't believe that the hateful anti-immigrant rhetoric is coming from our very own San Francisco. When working with children of immigrant families, I can clearly see the fear they have about our current government and that caring that we as educators take on in order to ensure students and families feel safe, not only in our schools, but in our city. The message that is being sent is not showing them protection nor reassurance, and children do not deserve to live with that fear. Me as an educator and we as leaders need to condemn any action that will weaken protections for immigrant communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Sorry, I'll call it for a second. Hi, my name is Reed Chalker. I am the president of San Francisco for Democracy, and I also work as a paralegal in criminal defense. One thing that I feel like really needs to be pointed out is the fact that with this ordinance that we're talking about, violent felons are still reported federally. Whether ICE decides to do anything with it or not is on them. All this really would do is kind of make their record search slightly different, I guess. So I don't really see from a legal standpoint why this is necessary. We already punish people. Like, I feel like some people are coming up and talking about how, like, oh, well, they still need retribution, the victims, blah, blah, blah. Look, regardless of how you feel about the prison system in this country, we still do punish the undocumented. It's not like, we don't sit in judges' chambers and say, judge doesn't say like, oh, they're undocumented, well, I guess we can't do anything, let's send them back on the street. Like, we still punish them, so, this doesn't really change much. All it really does is it seems to be for the purpose of being inflammatory to try to gain some really cheap political points. And we're already seeing how bad that gets. We see the violence out there to our communities of color because of all this. We also in San Francisco, I remember last year a lot of you were with me on this, we were running to be delegates, and both the Reform and Rebuild slate agreed that we should keep the sanctuary city laws as they are. We've already figured this out as a local party. What are we doing here debating this? So, I also want to point out so please support items 11 and 10. On top of it, I don't think I need to tell anyone, but what ICE has been doing is heinous and atrocious. Excuse me, please also support 9.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hi, my name is Rafael Trujillo. I'm a ADEM 17 delegate, right? Okay. I'm here to talk about the measure that is on proposed to be on your discussion here. I think it's item 10. And I think that I read that measure, and what it does, it really does nothing to change things other than to abolish a white washout period that was, I'm sure, was discussed at the time the measure was put into place. The sanctuary city policy was put into place. It abolishes a wipeout period, a washout period for people to have to report. Now, young people are my clients. I'm a criminal defense lawyer also. Been practicing law for 36 years. And the majority of people that get in trouble, undocumented or documented, are between the ages of 18 and 25. And, this is where the people catch the cases. And 20 years later, or 15 years later, or sometime down beyond the road, something happens that they get brought to court again for whatever reason, whatever situation they got involved in. And this measure takes no prisoners. It doesn't look at there is no washout period here. So even though the courts now can strike the prior violent and serious felony convictions of people given the circumstances and age, that's a new thing. We've been enlightened in California. This measure takes no prisoners. I don't know why it's on here, other than I have to agree, it's a cheap trick and a cheap stunt to try to bring attention to.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I have one more speaker card. John Paulo Lorenz. Next speaker, please.
Hi, my name is Lee Hale-Levitt, and I'm here to uphold the sanctuary law as it stands. I'm a City College faculty member, also ADEM 19 delegate. And first, let me share a statistic. The Pew Research Center says that 2/3 of our undocumented immigrants have lived here for 10 years or more. So keep that in mind. They are part of the fabric of our communities. So nobody really remembers statistics, but we remember people. I've worked with many people, students at City College, and also in high schools where I volunteered and had connections with City, who are undocumented. I had one student from Guatemala who was born here, but her mother tried to flee 3 times from the violence that was going on before she got to the shores. We have families. We have people who are here working 30 and 40-hour jobs while they go to school to support their families. And they not only make their lives better, they make San Francisco better. And I feel that as a person who's an immigrant myself. 50 years ago, nearly 50 years ago, my family came to this country. And it was for the first time in 2016 when Trump got elected that I started to feel fear. If I left San Francisco, I too could be targeted. The only place that I really felt safe was in San Francisco, in the Bay Area. And I will say that fear hijacks our brains. Fear is the greatest demagogue. We cannot let something like the so-called ballot measure take command of what we know is really the value that's true to our hearts, is to support everybody who lives here, because everybody who lives here has a right to be here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker.
Hello, my name is John Paul Veronese. Thank you to everybody here as well as the speakers. I thought this is my first time actually hearing this. I heard that there was a meeting before, but unfortunately I was able to miss it, but it was very informative to hear everybody talk. This is obviously a very emotional issue on both sides for all sorts of reasons. I'm a little biased here, obviously, because I am Angela Aliato's son. And I do know for a fact that she supports the immigrant community. And not only do I know that, I see it every day. Not only did she marry an undocumented man in the Dolphin, she, with my father, would go to the INS all the time to fight, to get people's, she would took me a couple of times to fight to be able to get certain documents filled properly. And I think, as far as I know, the last count that I knew was about 14 people she helped, my father and her helped, get documented properly at the INS. But, you know, I don't have a lot of time. I have a lot to say. But her record as a supervisor speaks for itself in terms of what she's done for people that don't have a voice, that are vulnerable. There's all sorts of things that have been said. You know, for her to be compared to Trump and all sorts of things and be called Nazi and things like that is pretty irresponsible, I believe. Not to mention the fact that for 18 years she's fought as a civil rights trial attorney and has clients that are undocumented and constantly works to make sure that those that are in the Hispanic community are represented. And I'm sorry, I had a lot to say, but in terms of the due process thing, all I can say is this is only relates to convicted felons. So I don't really understand the process. So thank you.
Next speaker. Now, any member of the public who has not spoken who would like to speak, you can please state your name.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Carlos Porras, and I'm a worker at the San Francisco Labor Council. So I'm
one of those very big workers, union workers in San Francisco. And first time being here, a bit nervous, but I wanted to take the opportunity to request this body support to pass by measure to incarcerate white women that are coming after me trying to rape me. I think it's important that somebody can stand for my rights. So all of you fair-skinned in the room know that I'm coming after your woman, whether it's your mother, your grandmother, your children, your grandchildren, or perhaps you, if you are one woman here in this room. So when you hear that kind of authority, how does that make you feel? This is the kind of language that cannot divide us, but instead we should be united. Your leaders today in this city. So San Francisco leads the nation when it comes to this kind of situation. So it's important for all of you to make the right choice, to think what you have heard before, and to do what's right, and to definitely look after our most disparate members of our community, which I believe are the immigrant community today. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Seeing no other member of the public who would like to speak, that concludes public comment. And again, I want to thank everyone for this. In terms of the agenda, unless there's any objection, I'm going to proceed with item 6 and skip item number 5, colleagues. Item 6 is proceeds directly to the business, which is one of the reasons why so many people came to be here. Yeah, we will move to that towards the end of the. So we'll move item 5 towards the end of the latter part of the agenda. I just want to make sure that we move to the business before us, which is one of the reasons why so many people came to speak. So with that, we will now move on to item number 6, which is a discussion of the San Francisco Democratic Party's political program and financial contributions for the June 5th, 2018 election. And I will begin with a very brief report, and then I will turn it over to our treasurer, and then I will turn it over also to Member Shea. But let me say this, that a number of comments have been made about the political program for this past election, and I want to be very clear and factual about what happened. I want to say that I'm very proud of the program that we put forward. Questions have been raised about the slate card program that we put together. And with respect to that slate card program, and we have the documents available to anyone who wants to see them, we did 3 slate cards that went citywide. One of them was actually in Spanish. And the 3 slate cards that were put together by the party followed all the rules that are outlined not only in the bylaws and procedures, but also the policy manual that was referenced during public comment. With respect to the listing of Supervisor Sheehy, I just want to be very clear. The 3 slate cards that were mailed list Supervisor Sheehy, and in fact have his picture. And in fact, I would say this, that based on the practice and past conduct of this body, the inclusion of Supervisor Sheehy in the slate cards was actually done out of courtesy. Because what we have done, consistent with our past practice, is that we will only put on our slate card candidates that are endorsed by the party that actually pay to be on the slate card. In this case, Supervisor Sheehy did not pay to be on the slate card, which we requested payment, and had this been the case before, he would not have been placed on the slate card if he had not paid. But we proceeded to put his name and picture, nevertheless, on the 3 slate cards that were mailed. Now, questions were raised about additional mailings that were done in District 8, where we focused on our #1 endorsed candidate, Raphael Mandelman. Consistent with past practice of this body, we did do additional mailings, which this party has done for other candidates, where we have included in those mailings a focus on individual candidates, and we have not included or added the entirety of the slate card, and that happened here. In fact, if you look at the article that is referenced in the policy manual, Article 6, if you look at Section 7.6 of that article, it specifically identifies that the number one endorsed candidate is the endorsed candidate of the Democratic Party and can actually be represented as such. Now, I want to talk about the Veritas contribution, because a couple of comments were made about the Veritas contribution. When we requested and sought contributions from a number of people, we sought contributions from everyone. I think that the record of this body and the people who are elected to represent this body when it comes to tenants' interests is very clear. And I certainly, I can tell you as a supervisor, have fought to protect tenants' rights. And even though I don't believe that we did anything wrong in obtaining that contribution, I do think it's important to send a very clear message what we as a party are about. And to the extent that Veritas or anyone engages in any conduct that goes after the rights of tenants, we want to send a very clear message that we in this party do not stand for. I don't believe, though, and actually I have to agree with Corey Smith, who made this comment about this contribution. I don't believe that we should give it back. And so I hereby make a motion that we make a contribution in the same amount that was made to us by Veritas of $10,000, which once we have the funds in our budget, I think that we should use $10,000 and make an equivalent contribution to the Housing Rights Committee, which does pro tem work, to make it clear that we are not in any way condoning any kind of conduct against tenants. So that is my motion.
Second.
So, any comments or questions about that motion?
Call a question.
Call the question. We can have a roll call on that motion.
All right. Member Alexander.
Yes.
Member Alioto. Member Baraka.
Yes.
Member Bree.
I think she was here earlier, but I think they left.
Member Campos.
Aye.
Member Chan.
Yes.
Member Cohen.
I think she left.
Member David Booth.
Yes.
Member Duffy.
Aye.
Member Fewer.
Aye.
Member Galata.
Aye.
Member Gross, yes. Member Gupta.
Aye.
Member Francis Shea.
Aye.
Member Tom Shea.
Aye.
Member Jung is out. Member Kim. Out. Member Lacroix.
Aye.
Member Levitan.
Yes.
Member Lowe. Member Lowe. Member Mahogany.
Aye.
Member Mandolin.
Aye.
Member Maxwell.
Aye.
Member Norton.
Aye.
Member Feinstein. Oh, absent. There's excused, here, excused. Member Ma.
Aye.
Member Weiner.
Aye.
Member Ting.
Aye.
Member Chu.
Aye.
Right, 22 ayes, 3 absent, so measure passes.
Thank you very much. I think it's important to send that message about who we are as a party. And with that, I'll turn it over to our treasurer, and then I'll turn it over to member Tom Shea. So our treasurer, Elizabeth Alexander.
Okay, wonderful. Good evening, everybody. There was a mix-up between our on what items need to be printed. So in your emails, for those of you, all of you who have your smartphones on you, if you want to follow along, I have emailed you the state income itemized for this year. So I am not going to go by all of them, though there's actually not as many as you think. I'm going to actually just highlight all donations that were received over $1,000 since January. This will be quick, but
What was that email sent?
earlier this evening when I came here and I realized it wasn't printed, you should have two.
6:50.
We sent at 6:50 today. I'll be happy to text it to you. Okay, so $3,000 from the San Francisco Firefighters Political Action Committee. $3,000 from Barnes, Mosher, Whitehurst, Lauder and Partners. $3,000 from SAU United Healthcare Workers West PAC.
$1,000 from United Educators of San Francisco Candidate PAC, $1,000 from Phil Ting for Assembly 2018, $1,500 from San Francisco Baseball Associates, LLC, $10,000 from SAU Local 10 to 1 Candidate PAC, $1,000 from Golden State Warriors, $5,000 Mark Leno for Mayor 2019, $3,500 Living Wage for Educators Committee, that's the ballot measure committee, $5,000 from National Union of Healthcare Workers Candidate Committee, the union, $50,000 from Retainer San Francisco Superior Court Judges 2018, $1,000 from Suresh Patel, $10,000 from Yerba Buena Commons Yerba Buena Commons Associates Inc., $5,000 from Seven Hills Properties LLC, $2,500 from Jane Kemper Mayor, $1,000 from Rafael Mendelman for Supervisor 2018, $10,000 from Clean, Safe, and Affordable Energy Yes on A, $5,000 from Yes on C, Universal Child Care in San Francisco, $5,000 from International Federation of Professional and Technical Engineers, it's Local 21, $10,000 from Veritas Properties S1, $10,000 from Clinton Riley, and $2,500 from Brown and Caldwell. So that is all of the donations we've received this year, over $1,000. In your packets, you have all of our expenditures. There's a question about where the slate cards fall. Those are on items that are dated June 5th. You can see that they are under service consulting, going across. Those say services for campaigns and member communication. 511, this is member communication. And then additionally, on 417 and 418, those are the newspaper ads for our slate.
With that, I will turn it over to Member Conche. And one thing that I would note, because a couple of folks have asked a question about the layout of the slate card. We traditionally do our slate card in November when the election happens. We often don't do a slate card program or a mail program in June. We had a June program because we had a special election in San Francisco. And one of the things, and I take responsibility for this, and if folks want to take a different approach going forward, I'm open to that. One of the things that I decided, and by the way, in this process, consulted with the executive committee that was elected here as we proceeded with this program, was that because there was a special election in San Francisco, that it was important for the local parties program to focus on the local elections. So that's what we did with the slate card. The only focus was on the local candidates. We did insert and provide and walk at different times the state slate card so that people could understand that that was also happening. But that was a choice that was made. And one thing that I would say going forward, because the executive committee plays this role of also serving as the slate card committee, I welcome any member of this body to be involved in that. We have nothing to hide. It's an open process. And if there are ideas that people have as to the best way to do a slate card program, open to your ideas as well. So with that, Member Township.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you for adding this item to the agenda for this month. This was brought about, as you know, members, from last month when we received a couple letters, specifically from Senator John Burton and from the Irish American Democratic Club, highlighting certain contributions, and then other questions started to percolate up about the slate card program. A couple of things that come to mind. Having been on the slate card committee for many years in the past administration of the DCCC, and having worked with different candidates from a variety of different Democratic political stripes, one thing that I think is really important for our party is that we maintain a very level playing field at all times. We all come to the table because of some political affiliation or some alliance with a candidate or an issue or a cause. That's great. That's what we should do. But when we get to the table and we actually administer the education, the GOTV, the communication with Democrats in San Francisco, we've got to put on our big Democrat hats and we've got to level the playing field. I bring up this because specifically, and I appreciate the chair's explanation of the 3 main slate cards that went out that highlighted former supervisor Jeff Sheedy. That is great. And I appreciate the fact that you mentioned that he did not contribute to the slate card program. I want to really point out that at no time in the last 17 years that I've been on the Democratic Party have we ever held a candidate or issue up for not appearing on the slate card if they did not contribute. And if anybody has anything different to offer that, who've been here a long time, please speak up anytime. This is just my personal recollection. The Democratic Party is a process. We send out questionnaires, we interview people, we make our votes. People earn the right to be endorsed by the party. They also earn the right to appear on our communication, whether they pay for it or not. Some people don't have the means, some do, most contribute. It's rare that they don't, but some can't. They get to appear anyway. Some have other reasons why they don't want to give. We don't get into that. We publish a slate card. If you're endorsed, you're on that slate card. End of story. I have some examples that I went back from a couple of years ago, maybe as far back as 2012, 2014, 2008. I'm just going to pass them around. Essentially what it shows is that the party is, we're not a paid-to-play organization. We are an organization that when we make our endorsement, it's up to us as the party to go raise the funds to support those that we endorse. And in the rare occasion that a candidate wants to do a one-off mailer, which has happened in the past, it's been our past practice to have that candidate pay for that mailer through their campaign. They come to the chair, or they come to the executive committee, and they say, I want to do a one-off for my district, I want to do a one-off for my judge's race, I'm endorsed, will you do that for me? And the chair says, yes, if you can raise us the money, we'll do it for you. You'll see the examples as we pass them on. You'll see many examples of candidates who were given one-off opportunities to send mailers out. They paid for them out of their campaign account into the DCCC, and records will reflect that. In addition to paying for their own promotion into the district or for whatever seat they're running for, we always included the entire slate in its entirety, along with that one-off mailer or door hanger. You're going to see the examples as they come by. There are many individuals who run and been endorsed by the DCCC. So in this last election, I believe we did break with some tradition. There were anomalies made from what I saw. I heard about these. I didn't see them because I don't live in the district that it was mailed to. And I just think that going forward, we need to figure out a way to enshrine a more predictable process with regards to candidates that want to come forward or issues and want to pay for extra mailers. I don't think that the DCCC is intended to become a soft money vehicle for one candidate or another. I think DCCC is supposed to promote endorsed candidates as fairly and as appropriately as possible. And I don't think anybody stands against that. I certainly don't. But just allowing the slate card committee or the executive committee to make a decision arbitrarily about what a mailer should look like, I just think that we do need to enshrine some type of predictability. And I would propose, after discussion, that we include all the endorsed candidates on every DCCC communication that go out, no matter who pays for it.
I know that Senator Wiener had a comment, and then I think our treasurer and I do want to add something too.
Thank you, David. Every election is different, and so I appreciate the fact that every election is different. Every election has different candidates, there's different things that we want to emphasize on our card, whether there's a statewide measure that we really want to oppose or a candidate before, I get that. But I do want to take exception to one thing you said, David. I've never heard of the party not putting something on the card because of didn't pay. I mean, I've been around since Linda Post was the chair in the 1960s, an ARJS. That's never, ever, ever happened. So we may not highlight them, we may not give them a picture, they may not be on everything we do, I get that. But we don't make a distinction that way because they don't pay. The other thing, I have no problem with a piece that if a candidate, if Raphael wanted to do a piece for his campaign through the party, absolutely, that he pays for it. That's generally has been the way it's been done in the past. Just for the record, that's the way, when I was the chair, that was the way it was done in the past. So I think the optics aren't good, but I appreciate you're trying to remedy that. So I respect that. But I do think that in the future, also, I understand you made a distinction between the state. I think that David Chu and the Phil thing should be on it. You have a committee, you voted to do that, that's your prerogative. But I don't think that I would have voted against that. But congratulations on your effort. But I think in the future, if we're sending the message to other folks that might get our endorsements in the future, that if they don't pay, they don't get, I don't know if that's the right message.
And what I would say on that is that that's certainly what was communicated to me as a candidate before, that I needed to pay to be on the slate card. And I have no problem going forward that an individual candidate piece of mail that the slate card be included in every one of those. I can tell you that hasn't always been the case. When I was endorsed in District 9, that wasn't the case. The same thing happened in the D9 race last time. So, but I think that's the policy. I think it makes sense to do that, and I don't have a problem with that. I do note this with respect to Supervisor Sheedy, that he did ask me, if I raised money, would you be willing to do a mailer that had a number 2? And it's like, absolutely, Supervisor. If you can do that, happy to do that.
I'm sure you can go. I don't question that at all. I do think that there's no question that it gets heavy-handed to try to get the money from the candidates. There's no question about that. That's part of the job of the chair, to raise the money for the card to get it out. And sometimes it's hard, and folks do have to pay. There's a lot of pressure on them to pay. But at the end of the day, we don't not have them on because they should pay.
So our treasurer and then Supervisor Fewer and Supervisor Mandel.
I like probably most people agree that if we can do it. I just wanted to highlight that we've been given, and I don't even want to repeat it because it's not. I'm not confident myself, but I would like to go back and to ask our accountants and ask our lawyers, because there is something about in-kind donations and there's just some legal stuff that we should probably check on before we create a new policy. So I just want to flag that.
Supervisor Fewer.
Oh, yeah, thank you very much, Chair. I just wanted to mention in my elections, I have been endorsed by Sarasota Democratic Party, and actually I was led to believe that if I did not pay, I would not be, my face and my name would not be on the card. And when I ran in 2012, it was $5,000 to have my name and face on the card. I was running for school board, and I was charged $5,000 to have my face and name. And I came up with $3,000, and I just want to say I was a little worried. I didn't meet the mark, but then I heard that other people gave way less. And so I do think that there should be a parity here. A school board member running for a position which is not even a paid position is, I think $5,000 is really a lot of money to be on the slate card, but that was what I was charged actually to be on the card at that time.
When you're reelected, when you're going to 200,000
Well, $500 for,
200,000 people are receiving a slate
no,
card.
I understand that, but quite
5,000
frankly,
people, I'm sure your consultant will tell you.
but
that.
so Chair,
Can I just have a point
please
of order?
moderate.
Yes.
Okay, so I have the floor, I think. I think I was respectful when you had the floor. So I just wanted to say my experience and my opinion. And yes, I know, but I was one of many, 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 many people on that slate card at that time. And I just think $5,000 for someone who is not getting public financing on a school board raise is very expensive. But when I realized that other people had paid way less than me, then I think there should be some parity there. And I think that if you are going to charge $5,000 and you throw it out there, and then you say your face isn't going to be on here, even though you got the endorsement, then if people, as a candidate, you do get afraid. And I do think it is heavy-handed. And I think there should be some rules around parity then about what the mailing actually costs. If this is to pay for the mailing, but if this is to pay to build up the Democratic Party, then let that be said. But quite frankly, I have also paid to be on slate cards. I never has anybody, any Democratic club, anything, ever charged me $5,000 for a school board race. So I just want to make that clear. And if you'd like to have the floor, I'm sure that the chair will acknowledge you. Thank you.
Supervisor Mandel.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is good after elections to bind up the wounds that have divided the body politic, and come together and let bygones be bygones, and generally not continue to wage the wars of the last election. On this body, apparently, there are folks who want to continue to litigate the June election, and so I guess we'll do that for a little while longer. But I do want to extend my hearty congratulations to this chair of this party, who put together, and also the executive committee, who put together a program that, in addition to electing me, for which I'm very grateful for helping elect me, and again, I am eager and looking forward to serving with our new mayor, but I would not have imagined, however many months out, that the ticket that is highlighted on these cards would have done as well as it did. I would not have imagined that we would have managed to pass in this city a groundbreaking, thank you Supervisor Kim, amazing innovation, new entitlement, universal child care. I mean, and the babies like it too, would have passed a truly significant tenant protection, piece of tenant protection legislation in Proposition F, which I think will make a huge difference for tenants, not just in Veritas properties, but in all properties, and would have managed to pass a parcel tax to fund a significant increase in salaries for our teachers. And so I am very proud of the work that this party did to make those things happen. And I am grateful that in light of my 10 plus years of service on this board and work that I have done in the community and work that I have done with many of you, some of you saw fit to prioritize the District 8 race. And I'm very, very grateful for that. I also want this body, which at the moment has a progressive majority, and again, I think the progressive moderate divide, as I've said, is overstated and shouldn't be emphasized all the time, but I do think it matters and is important for our politics in the city that there is a progressive voice speaking from the Democratic Party. And it was interesting to see a letter about campaign finance abuses coming from an organization that pumped $900,000 into the 2016, I believe, races. And so for this party, which has a progressive majority, to allow itself to be tied up in knots and prevented from being effective and successful in future elections is a move that I would not support. And so I think although everybody gets to speak and we get to relitigate elections as much as we want to, I would urge the majority of this party in this body to preserve its ability to support progressive causes and progressive candidates. Thank you.
So I think we have Supervisor and then Supervisor Kim.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I just want to understand this. First of all, when you hear the numbers from the treasurer, you've got 1,000 from one group, 3,000 from another group, 1,500 from another group, and all of a sudden, $10,000. I think that there absolutely needs to be an oversight group in the finance committee that questions who the money's coming from, what do they do, what is their reputation in the community, are they cheating tenants, which of course is one of our largest advocacies on the DCCC, make sure we keep people in their homes. Well, we should have known who Veritas was. We should have known how they evict people. We should have known. So I think that we need to put some kind of tool in the finance committee or whoever it is that accepts these checks. And believe me, I don't want that responsibility or to be on that committee. That is not what I'm saying at all. Somebody needs to know who's giving money, where's it coming from, and should we take it as the Democratic Party. I think that's extremely important. Another issue that is looming in this situation is whether or not anybody knew that this exact group had been lobbying in front of Supervisor Sheehy. I mean, that's a stunning revelation. I mean, did they fool us and not let us know that they've been lobbying in front of Supervisor Sheehy and were in fact denied because of their horrible tenant reputation? So when I heard who received the money, I think that's extremely embarrassing for us to not have known who they were, and what they were presently doing with one of the candidates that was excluded. I'm not saying that anything is bad there. I'm saying there's appearance of something not looking good on the part of Veritas. And knowing how they exclude tenants, there's no doubt in my mind that they would be malicious enough to intentionally do it, and we would be unaware. But we have a duty to investigate. We need to know who's giving us money. We need to know why they're giving us the money. And I think that's extremely important when it comes to finances for the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party has a great name. It can't have people like Veritas giving us money.
Supervisor Kim, can you speak with the baby?
Jane, did you have that since the election?
Congratulations.
Yes.
Really incredible, actually. 9 months. That's for us. That's for parents. I just want to say that I also want to acknowledge the optics of what happened, and I don't think that, I understand that we're an all-volunteer group that is running these programs, and so I'm not saying that things like this can happen, but it happened, and I don't want to relitigate what happened, but I do acknowledge the optics of it, being that, Supervisor Sheen was holding a hearing, holding this donor accountable. And I appreciate the direction that we're moving in.
She wanted to talk.
But what I would recommend is something very similar to what Member Alioto is recommending, which is setting some type of set of principles. I do think we should have a transparent process about what our mailers are going to look like in the future. Right, so understanding that this has happened, I do think we should have everyone on a mailer. I just do, even if they can't afford it. I've always been under the understanding that if I pay, it's the size of my photo, not whether my name is on the slate card. Because if I've been endorsed, I've been endorsed. But I understand that everyone has a different understanding, but that's part of the problem is that we all have a different understanding of what it means to be on a slate card. So I'd like to just set a set of principles or criteria, because we talk a lot about progressives being empowered, or the moderates being empowered, but we know that it's going to go back and forth. So we should have a clear standard for all of our candidates. I would please to be number 2 and not to see my name on a slate card because I wasn't able to raise the money to be in the card. The Democratic Party is not about supporting candidates with enough money. It's about supporting the candidates that we have endorsed. But again, I don't think it's about saying anyone made a mistake in the past. I just think moving forward, what I would like to see is a standard by which we do our mail card and our slate card program. But I do think that everyone should be included on the slate card, regardless of how much money they're able to raise. That is not what our party is about, which is that we only promote candidates that have the ability to give money. But I do understand how it may impact how much footprint you get on a mailer. That I do understand. So I guess, what I would ask of the committee, because again, I'm not volunteering myself as member Elliott, I did not. But I would just set an open and transparent criteria for the November slate card that hopefully this committee keeps, so that all of its candidates understand what it is, and we don't all have a different understanding of what it means to be on the slate card, and that we should think about a criteria for our donors as well. When candidates run, they say we're not going to take money from tobacco and from oil. Maybe that's something that this party can consider as well.
Well, I think that if anyone is interested in being a part of such a committee, please come forward now. Okay, so we have Member Duffy, Member Shea. Who else? Okay, so Member Wiener, Member Lowe, Member Alexander, Galata. Anyone else? Okay. Yes.
Would you be willing to appoint a chair to that subcommittee so that you can actually get calendar to move forward?
Okay, Member Duffy, would you mind being, since you were the first to volunteer, so Member Duffy has graciously volunteered to be the chair of that committee. Okay, great. I know we have a number, yes, go ahead. Yes, please. I think you can speak as the member president of the club. Is there a mic there?
Mike's right here. Thank you. I can't help but intrude because I'm Sharon Johnson, Irish American Democratic Club. But as the executive director...
Oh, it's only during public comment. Okay, I'm sorry.
Again, I want to just give a point of information about the Democratic Club back in the 1970s when I was chair and how they did the slate card. Is that not acceptable?
Maybe you can share that information with folks. Yes, Member Shea.
Point of order. My understanding of the bylaws are that an associate member has floor rights. It doesn't define floor rights as general public floor rights, general public comment floor rights. It defines it as floor rights. So, my point is, if recognized by the chair, I believe an associate member has the right to speak under any agenda item at any time. No right to vote.
Thank you for bringing that up. I was just noting that in my interpretation of the bylaws and our policy procedures manual, I earlier in the afternoon told Corey that his presidential privilege applied only to public comment. So I wanted to recognize that. So if the chair allows Ms. Johnson to speak, that we would also allow other members who have presidential privilege to do that as well.
My understanding, by the way, is that presidential privilege applies throughout the meeting on different items. So is that what you wanted to say, Member Gupta?
These are the bylaws here, if you'd like me to read them. Yes, it's right there.
I think that's, so I will recognize member, and I will also, if Mr. Smith would like to speak, happy to give you that opportunity. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much.
And just, the only thing I would say is that I know people, it's getting late, and so I just want to make sure that we get to the other items that we have on the agenda.
1 minute.
Please.
In 1977 and 79, when I was executive director of the San Francisco Democratic Party, and we only had one slate card. There wasn't slate cards like it is today. But how the money was raised was that Agar Jakes, who was chair of the County Central Committee at the time, would go to all the elected federal and state and local Democrats elected to all, from the Board of Equalization to Congress to state to Assembly, and beg them for the money to mail the mailer for the slate card. That's something that Member Chu said about once you were certified as being honored to receive the Democratic County Central Committee's endorsement, you were on. No one paid anything. They were just on. And everybody's name was equal and same and fair.
And so, and we also paid 50 cents to everybody who went out and registered a Democrat. And in one summer, we registered 22,000 Democrats. And this was just volunteers. So I want to remind you of how it was done at a time when you weren't sending out 30 slate cards, where the consultants were getting, the mailer people were getting a lot of money. So, and only one issue was when they started to copy the official Democratic County Central Committee, and they started to put the word official. And one other point is that I just want to say, because Supervisor Mendelman raised it, my question about Veritas wasn't about you and Supervisor Sheehy. It was about the fact that it was Veritas and how this organization has fought against corporate realtors for a long time, and all of a sudden there was money, and it happened to be coinciding with the hearing that we had at the Board of Supervisors, but it had nothing to do with the election. It had to do with what was right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Mr. Smith, I would just only ask you that you please keep it brief so that we can go to the next items.
Thank you. Two things. Number one, I want to thank you for your earlier motion regarding the donation. Really appreciate it. Everybody's on board with these two.
Talk into the microphone.
There we go. I wanted to thank Chair Campos for the motion earlier regarding the donation. I think everybody's on board with that. And second, really echo what Member Kim or Supervisor Kim stated earlier, just about making sure we're all on the same page going forward, because control of this is going to go back and forth, and just making sure everybody agrees at the level even playing field. I think we can all agree to that and focus on more important things.
All right, folks, thank you very much. I don't think that there's any other action that is needed here, so we'll move on to item number 7, which is the review of request for proposal for the state mail program for the November 6, 2018 general election. And as you know, we issued a request for proposal. We posted online at the last meeting of the Democratic County Central Committee. We noted how we needed, all of us needed to let anyone who might be interested in competing for this proposal to please submit a proposal. We only have received one proposal, and that's from Stearns Consulting. And so my recommendation as chair is that we, consistent with the rules that we laid out in the RFP, that we, I make a motion that we accept the proposal from Stearns Consulting. It's the only bid that we received, and the only thing that I would say is that if anyone wants to have competition, make sure you get folks to submit a request. A proposal. Second. Okay, before we go.
Just a quick comment on the bid, and I'm happy that we actually had somebody respond, so that's great news for us. Going forward, I'd like to make sure that there's some language in the new committee coming up to address violations of any bylaws or policies and procedures with regards to this new slate card rules. If a consultant violates any of those rules, then they will not be allowed to bid on future slate cards. And I think that's a reasonable concern, because usually it's the professionals who are doing the work. It's the volunteers like us who are raising the money and making the phone calls, but it's actually the professionals who are getting paid to put this card out, who are actually designing, who are, picking the font, picking the photo, picking the word, the mail universe, whatever. They're doing all the background stuff that the consultant should do. And I think they need to be on the same page as this committee and held to the same level that we hold ourselves.
Well, I mean, ultimately, what I would say to that, the consultant, works for us and works for the committee and the people that are working on it, and so we are there to give direction.
I agree with that, but to the chair, just wanted, since we only have one bidder,
yes,
we may only have one bidder again next time. But we want this one bidder to follow through with the principles that we're promoting.
So we have yes, Member Maxwell.
It seems that that's something to discuss in the committee. That we don't really have to discuss that here, that when you have a committee meeting, that you can bring that up and thoroughly discuss. Here.
So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes. Thank you very much. Now we will go on to item number 8, which is discussion of the Violent Felony Reporting Act, a proposed local ballot measure by San Francisco Municipal Team Member Alioto. I'm going to first turn it over to Member De Jesus, who's here by proxy, and then I think as a matter of fairness, we will then turn it over to Member Alioto, whose measure is before us. But this is an item that was requested by Member De Jesus, and who's here by proxy, so we'll turn it over to her. Through proxy.
Thank you, Chair Campos. As many of you know, immigration sanctuary laws in our city have been recent hot topics as they often been under attack by the Trump administration and right-wing news outlets and blogs. I'd like to start by saying San Francisco sanctuary ordinance is thoughtful compromise legislation that took a long time to craft with the immigrant rights community, the board of supervisors, the mayor, and local law enforcement leaders. It protects due process, and due process is a fundamental protection against tyranny and abuse of federal power. Unfortunately, the proposed Violent Felony Reporting Act undermines the values of due process, so it was put on tonight's agenda as a discussion. I do have a presenter here tonight who will give us a short presentation that will provide framing and context on sanctuary city and due process for all, and due process for all, and why it is a sound policy. I'd like to call Syra Hussein from Asian Americans Advancing Justice, the Asian Law Caucus.
Hello, I'm here. And unfortunately, I can't move because the laptop can't move.
Hold on. Here you go.
You get two of them. Hello, everyone. Good evening. My name is Syra Hussein.
Can you speak up?
Turn it on.
Turn it on.
Thank you. Is this working? Okay. Good evening, everybody. My name is Syra Hussein. I'm a staff attorney at the Asian Law Caucus in San Francisco. I want to talk with you a little bit today about sanctuary and due process laws. I was here for all public comment and heard of a lot of what everybody had to say. And so I want to make sure that what we're doing is working from a common understanding of what the laws currently do and what the proposed ballot initiative also intends to do. So just by way of introduction, I had the pleasure of working with Supervisor Avalos in order to draft the 2016 updates to the most recent sanctuary ordinance. So I do want to make sure people understand exactly what we're talking about. Like I said, so that we do have a common understanding and that we're not all talking about what we think it does, but rather what it actually does. Yes. Okay.
Alex and I might move.
Thank you. Okay, so like I said, we want to understand the framing and context for our current sanctuary laws and to understand the issues that may exist with the ballot initiative that competes with the current sanctuary laws. So first I'm going to walk you through the history of San Francisco's immigrant policies. San Francisco, as many of you know, passed its sanctuary ordinance, which is actually called the City and County of Refuge Ordinance, in 1989. And at the time, it limited the use of city resources in assisting ICE with detention and deportation. It applied to all public services ranging from hospitals to police. And then in 1993, there was an exception added. So people don't know this. The original sanctuary ordinance actually didn't have exceptions. It didn't have exceptions. In 1993, there was an exception added to the ordinance for somebody who was arrested and booked on a felony. And the reason why was because at the time, the federal government had placed a restriction on counties that were receiving block grants for drug and criminal justice funding. And so as a part of that, they required that people who were booked in on felonies be reported to the federal government. And that's when that was added. In 2003, I believe it was, that provision under the federal block grant was actually removed. It was repealed by federal law. So we had it in our ordinance thereafter, but the federal government had removed it from their provisions. In 2009, we helped pass a due process for all for youth ordinance. That was authored by then Supervisor Campos. It was a compromise legislation passed 8-3 at the Board of Supervisors. and it responded to the issue of youth being turned over to ICE by juvenile probation. There had been youth, as some of the speakers had mentioned, who, after being charged with an offense, were deported pretty quickly back to their home countries, many of whom had never been there ever or hadn't been there in years. And there was serious community concern about juvenile confidentiality and the right of due process. And so this legislation prohibited juveniles from being charged with offenses, who were charged with offenses from being turned over to ICE. And as the other speakers had mentioned too, this actually did not go into effect because then Mayor Gavin Newsom did not enforce it. And so it took until about 2011 for it to actually go into effect. Oh, I don't know what happened there. Okay, sorry about that. I don't know what's going on. So the Due Process for All ordinance was passed in 2013. That was authored by then Supervisor Avalos. And it consisted of, it limited the use of ICE holds, which were means of which the federal government was trying to have local jails hold people for extra time for civil immigration purposes. So basically, they were going to be released. Federal government said, we want this person to be in our custody, so why don't you just hang tight with them after they're already eligible for release so that we can come and take them into custody. Now, these ICE holds in San Francisco, we said, we're not going to do it. There's a very narrow exception. But pretty soon after we passed our Due Process for All ordinance, the following year there were several court decisions that said that these ICE holds lack constitutional protections. They violate the Fourth Amendment because they lack protections around search and seizure. They constitute a new seizure and they're not justified by their own probable cause. So they're voluntary requests. Just want to make that very, very clear. Then in 2016, we once again decided to make an update to the sanctuary due process legislation. The main reason was because ICE had been changing their tactics at the federal level. So remember those court cases I just told you about? That came into play because ICE started changing their tactics. They said, okay, we're not going to ask you to hold people anymore for immigration purposes. We're going to ask you to let us know when that person is going to be released from your jail. Give us the date, time, and notification, and we'll be there. Now that also led to its own set of problems. I mean, it led to the separation of families, as you can imagine, but it also led to people being kind of held for additional time, quietly. They were being held for a few extra minutes or hours. Their release was being delayed in order to turn this person over to ICE. So in 2016, we decided to pass some updates. It was passed unanimously by the Board of Supervisors and agreed upon by the mayor, the sheriff, and community members. And it limited the use of all ICE requests, including these notification requests, as well as requests for personal information, because ICE had started to do things like ask for home and work addresses of people. And then the last thing that this legislation did was it removed the felony exception to the sanctuary ordinance. Because as you remember, the sanctuary ordinance amended in '93 said that we could turn people over who had been booked in on a felony charge. One of the real impetuses for passing this policy was actually a client that I represented. His name is Pedro Figueroa. He was here in the city. He was the victim of car theft. He went to the San Francisco police and he asked for his car back when they gave him a call and said, we've recovered your car. When he went to that station, they found what's known as a civil immigration warrant on him. Now that civil immigration warrant pops up in their database. It was based on a deportation order from 2005 that he didn't even know existed because he wasn't there when the deportation order was given. He didn't even know he had a court date. So he was there at the station. The police decided to arrest him on the basis of that civil immigration warrant. They detained him in the back and they ended up turning him over to ICE. He spent 2 months he spent 2 months in immigration detention, separated from his family. He's a resident here in the mission. So this is the criteria for the current sanctuary ordinance. You know, just to understand. So if the person's been convicted of a violent felony in the past 7 years, felony in the last 5 years or convicted of 3 felonies in the last 5 years. And the judge has determined there's probable cause that the person is to be held on face charges of felony. And the sheriff has to also consider other factors like community ties and rehabilitation. So some important things to take away from this is that these policies reflect the values of due process, redemption, and shared humanity that we as a community have reflected, that it has buy-in from pretty much every element of the community you can imagine, from electeds to community members to the sheriff, and that people from all communities came out to support the policy, including, as others have mentioned, domestic violence survivors, labor leaders, and human rights advocates. So under this proposed ballot initiative...
I would ask that you wrap it up so that we can...
Sure, thank you. I'm just going to quickly go through this. Under the current ballot initiative, it allows reporting information regarding an individual to ICE or cooperating with a request if the person has been convicted of a violent felony after the date of the act, or convicted of a prior violent or serious felony, and the judge has determined there's probable cause for violent or serious felony charges. So the issues with this is that it violates state law, the Values Act, as others have mentioned over here, because it allows for reporting information, and that's a very broad phrase. The Values Act does not allow for reporting personal information of individuals. It also removes important prohibitions on arrest based on civil immigration laws, like that my client was arrested on, or detaining someone based on an immigration hold. It removes all time limitations around a conviction, so even if somebody had a conviction from years and years ago, that's something that could then be used against them to deport them and turn them over to ICE. And then it allows any city agency to report people accepted for protection to ICE, including, for example, if somebody goes and seeks healthcare services at SF General, they could be then, a healthcare worker could then turn them over to ICE, whereas the current policies are restricted around police. That's pretty much all I have.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the presentation. Member, is there anything else?
That's it on
Okay, so we're going to turn it over now to Member Aliotto, and then we will open.
Just a question on one of the slides.
Okay, which?
Why don't we wait?
Why don't we wait, Member Aliotto?
Chair Campos, first of all, let me just say that there's an inherent unfairness in not allowing someone who is quasi-accused to be able to speak when the people who are speaking against her are speaking. In other words, 3 hours ago, people started speaking against this, and I was unable to say anything or clarify the incredible amount of misinformation. And so, as a consequence, I believe that this committee needs to change its policies, as the State Democratic Party has, and as the Board of Supervisors for the City and County of San Francisco has, where the person is allowed to speak when confronted with misinformation in certain situations. For example, I should have been allowed to speak first before, in other words, the item should have been spoken to when the item is called. Generally speaking, public comment is about item, generally speaking, not at this board, but at the Board of Supervisors, general public speaking, public comment is not about anything that's on the agenda. Things are spoken about, things that are on the agenda when the agenda is called. So as a consequence, I've lost about 50 or 60 people that I haven't been able to talk to and explain my side. It's been extremely one-sided. And I just think that that policy ought to be looked to. Can we put the first film back up on the screen, because the young lady who is speaking is not correct about the first 2 slides, and I'd like to correct it. I was there. It was September 25th of 1989. It was not an ordinance. It was a resolution. Resolutions do not have teeth. Ordinances are law. I have the physical document. So it says passed in 89. That's incorrect. It was not an ordinance. Then it also says limits use of resources in assisting ICE. In 1989, 1991, and 1993, when I amended this law, there was no ICE. ICE didn't exist until 2001. ICE existed after 2001 for purposes of higher enforcement for terrorism. So that's incorrect on there. When I went back as the sponsor of that 1993 exception, it wasn't just because we were going to be denied some of the federal money. It was because a young lady whose husband had stabbed her and her daughter came to me. She was undocumented, daughter undocumented, husband undocumented. Came to me and said, please, the police are telling me that they can't report it because he's undocumented and that the sanctuary law I wrote in 91 protected him. And she was afraid of her life. That's why we had those hearings in 1993. She was undocumented. She'd been hospitalized. It was attempted murder, and it was his second time, and he was undocumented. So, move forward to 2009. The juveniles, we're not touching the juveniles in 2009 in this ordinance. We're not touching that. And that is not a due process issue. I have heard due process out of the mouths of lawyers tonight when there is no due process issue. This is about a convicted felon. Convicted felon. It is not about due process with all due respect. I am a national civil rights trial lawyer. Due process is the opportunity to be heard, the opportunity to have the trial. This ordinance is only about convicted felons. So, if you take a look at the ordinance, which we have copies of, there are two, if you could pass that around, I appreciate it, and to the public if possible, there are two very clear situations where this ordinance comes into effect. And only then does this ordinance come into effect. And that is, local law enforcement will allow the city to share information regarding an individual's federal immigration officials if the individual is convicted of a felony. Okay, conviction. There's no due process argument. Doesn't exist. Or if the individual was already convicted of a violent or serious felony and is ordered to stand trial for a second violent felony. For a second violent felony. Now, I have been meeting with a lot of felons who have been through jail, who were undocumented when they went to prison for a felony. I have listened to the rehabilitation arguments. I will continue meeting with every single Democratic Party that there is that wants to talk about this. And if anyone can convince me why we would be protecting violent felons that under the penal code is described as rape, murder, and mayhem. Mayhem is when you chop somebody's body out. Those are the violent felonies that I am talking about. Supervisor Campos asked me in 2016, would I support him adding back into my sanctuary law? Would I support adding felons back in that I had taken out in 1993? And I told him, no, I would not. Why in the world? All these women that come to me and say, my husband's doing this to me, my husband's doing that to me. Little girls who tell their teachers, my mother's boyfriend's doing this to me, doing that to me, but they can't get reported because they're undocumented, and if they were American citizens, they would be reported. So there is that inherent disparity. So any of you out there, please listen to me. I have fought for civil rights my whole life. I have fought for immigrants, documented and non-documented, my whole life. I have fought for victims my whole life. Victims. I have fought for patients' rights my whole life. The forgotten people, the dead daughters, the dead sons. That's who I have fought for my whole life. There's not one thing in this new ordinance that says anything about someone who is not an already convicted felon. And for a young lawyer to stand up and show you a screen that says it's about due process and that says it will fail here and it will fail there, well, I'll meet you in court because it won't fail in those areas. Now, As a true blue Democrat my entire life, I'm heartbroken to hear a Latina stand up here tonight and say the Democratic Party of the state of California and of the city of San Francisco has done nothing for brown and black people. I am disgusted that that could even come out of somebody's life. The fight the Democratic Party has done for brown people, that she clearly doesn't understand what the fight was 50 years ago. It's all these rights have been given because of this Democratic Party. And to not be able to correct someone who is speaking on something like that, I think that's a detriment to all the young people who are listening to what's happening here. So, to end this, I just want to tell you all, any of you, I'm going to Italy on Saturday. Thank the Lord. I will be gone for 6 solid weeks. Okay? I'm gone. But I would love to speak to you, sir, standing up against the wall. I would love to speak to you, young lady. You need to speak. You need to talk to people and try to understand both sides, and maybe both sides can change. But you need to give the opportunity to speak. You can't be so set in your way that there's an entitlement issue. We all can change, we all can learn. The young man
That's enough.
Okay.
I'm not talking about you changing. I'm talking about me changing. I hope so. I absolutely, so you can be able to talk to me. You still have the work.
I would say,
Okay. So going back, I just want everyone to know that if there's anyone that has any questions, I'll be back in September. I'd love to talk to you. I plan on talking to all the Democratic clubs. And I plan on making sure you understand that this is only the 2 prongs, it's only violent felons, and I have met with so many undocumented people who have begged me to do this.
okay, I think we have to be respectful. You had an opportunity. I just want to say a couple of points because I was mentioned in the last comment. This supposed conversation that took place in 2016, and I'm happy to say this under oath, that never happened. That never happened.
Okay, can I
so hold on. You had your say, and I'm going to speak. Now, what I would say is this, right? That the challenge that so many of us who have worked on this have with this proposal is that these comments and statements are made that are just not factual, right? And I can tell you first and foremost, right, that if you actually look at the history of this proposal, one of the reasons why there's so much confusion is because there are actually 2 proposals. There was an initial proposal that this author introduced, okay, that actually had language that basically said that the moment there is a booking and suspicion of any criminal activity, that there is reporting, okay? That's what was given to the city when it was filed for consideration, okay? This individual had to backtrack and take that back because everyone pointed out that, in fact, if that was based on suspicion and booking, it deprived due process, okay? And then the other issue that we have is that when this was introduced, and there was a quote that was made, and this is a quote of the individual, talking about how the existing, this is the quote, the existing sanctuary ordinance is a magnet for felons across America that come to the safe shores of our city. As was noted in the screen, that the idea that our sanctuary ordinance in any way harbors felons is simply factually wrong. The law is very clear that it covers serious and violent felons, okay? And the penal code is very specific about what that covers. And so to have people come here and say, why do you want to protect felons? We don't want to protect felons. Our law doesn't protect felons, okay? And so that's what's so scary about this, right? That so many people hear that from someone who's a licensed member of the Bar Association of California saying that when it's just not factual, right? And this is what I would end with, okay? This is why this is so dangerous. That I see it in Santa Clara where I work. I see it in San Francisco. People who are immigrants, whether they're documented or undocumented, are terrified of going to get basic government services. Ask San Francisco General. Ask the Valley Medical Center in Santa Clara. The number of people, I see a doctor here, Dr. Gupta, the number of people going to the ER has gone down. Not because the need has gone down, but because people are terrified. And so the reason why it's important that this be on this agenda is because many people in this community in San Francisco think that because of this proposal, we're no longer a sanctuary city. That's why we're here. And look, I don't believe that this author intends any kind of violence, but what happens when you talk about immigrants as criminals is that it fans the flames of the worst elements of society. And those are the people that are coming forward. And I can tell you that I have lived it personally, because besides the attack, the threat that people saw on Facebook, there is a right-wing blog that is talking about how I'm doing this. And by the way, the interesting thing about the way this author talks about this amendment, if you actually look and you saw it, the amendment that she's referencing is actually the main author is Avalos. I'm a co-sponsor. But it's interesting that in right-wing blogs, you get more points if you identify what you're targeting as something that was written by the supervisor who happened to be a former undocumented person. Right? She referred to it as the compost amendment. As she noted, she's not talking about my amendment because my amendment was about Julian. Right? And yet, throughout her presentation in the press, it's the compost amendment. It's true. Right. That is the truth. So with that, I'll turn it over to Member Duff.
And I would like another one.
Oh, yeah. Well, actually, I'm sorry. Duffy, Mandelman, and Member Ting.
So I have two brief comments. Number one, having served as a supervisor and serving on the DCCC, the purpose of public comment is for individuals from the public to speak their truth to power. And by that I mean the individuals on the DCCC, members of the Board of Supervisors. I would strenuously oppose any effort to allow those of us that have the opportunity to cast the votes, to make the motions, to interfere, to intimidate, or to put people under a sense of duress when it is difficult for many people to speak in a public setting. Obviously, not something that is experienced by the people sitting around this table. So I just want to make it absolutely clear that I have zero interest, and I will fight tooth and nail that it is absolutely inappropriate, undignified, and beneath the offices that people hold here to attempt to intercede with people's right to speak to us. So I just want to lay it out. And then I want to make it clear that public comment at the Board of Supervisors is not limited to items not on the agenda. It also applies to items that have not been heard in committee. So every individual is supposed to have the opportunity to come and provide comment. And so items that are on the board agenda that have not been heard in committee are subject to being discussed in public comment.
Member King and then Member Mandelman. Oh, I'm sorry, Alexander too. I'm sorry, my fault.
Here. Well, all right.
And then I think Member Leota wants to speak after that too.
Sure, oh dear. I just want to say, because I'm not an attorney, so I printed out, and I don't have it with me. Gosh darn it.
You got it? Okay.
So I printed it out, I read through it, I don't have it with me, I forgot it, but I'm just trying to kind of wrap my head around. So I guess the question to the chair is, the main crux of what this does, just get my understanding of what this would do to the law, is that it removes the 5 and 7 year kind of cutoffs, like grace periods. So the author agrees with that, kind of the boiling down the basics of what this does. So the question is kind of why do these limits need to be removed, that these 5 and 7 year limits, why that comes to pass?
I mean, you want to answer that? Here's the.
I can answer.
You're absolutely right. That is a correct reading of the law. It undoes the 7. The state law does not allow for 800 felonies in the state sanctuary law, and that's without limit. So what we were doing was copying the state law without limit for just these dangerous felonies, the 3 I mentioned. So you're absolutely right.
Okay, so member Alexander, then member Mandelman, and then member Shea.
So I just wanted to bring up a few points. One of my concerns about this ordinance, I have so many, is that currently in the law, there is a distinction between sanctuary ordinance that applies to all city employees and this due process for all ordinance that deals with civil immigration detainers. And this ordinance mixes those two, and as a city worker myself, new to the game, but I'm very concerned that what this does is it mixes and it gives unclear parameters for all city employees and city departments. And I know that when as a member of SAU 10-1, our healthcare workers, our social workers were so terrified that they would not be able to provide their services because people would say, I can't go because anyone can turn that information over. Maybe you, social worker, you're great, but what if the clerk isn't? What if this other person that happens to have access isn't? It does not, there's not a clear distinction of who has that authority to turn the information over. And that has been one of the concerns that I've heard from other city employees who are very concerned about these new changes. I want to share a personal story. I had a very, very close friend of mine who was undocumented and who was accused of a violent crime, who went through the entire due process, and in the middle of court, the person accusing them was like, their brother was like, yeah, we made it all up. Like, the whole thing was made up. We're just trying to get them out of the apartment to get their apartment. Like, it was like a really ugly, kind of like housing at their worst. Without due process protections, that would not have come to light. Without due process protections, that person would have, like my friend who has 3 children, would have been deported. And so we really have to protect our due process. We have to stand truth. And I just have to say, as a white person, having folks come up here and speak on behalf of communities that we are not from is not okay. It really isn't. To say, oh, I'm doing this so that you're going to be safer, that's not okay. We don't get to set the parameters for what safety means. We have to be listening, and we have to be good allies, and we have to think about how are we challenging racism from the bottom here, and what safety gets defined with the communities that are saying this is how we need to be safe.
Supervisor Mandelman. Pass member Shea and then member Alioto. Member Alioto, do you want to add anything?
Yes, I just want to disclose.
Well, first of all, again, convicted felons. This does not pertain to anybody not convicted. Your example just now was not convicted. Supervisor Campos, my integrity is extremely important to me. And when you say that I lied to you or I'm lying to the public, I have an email from you admitting that we had the conversation about this at Bob Privington's house. So I don't know why you're denying that now, but a month and a half ago, you agreed we had the conversation about not adding the felony at Bob Privington's house. Again, anyone that ever wants to come talk to me, please do that. This is something that needs to be discussed. It's not until November of 2019 if it goes on the ballot at all.
Hi, so I just wanted to ask a really quick question, since there's been a lot of talk about the state law, and can I direct it to the presenter? Okay, so we've been talking a lot about SB 54 and how it interacts with San Francisco sanctuary policy. Could you clarify exactly how that works?
Sure. So actually, my organization wrote SB 54 as well. So a lot of talk about how San Francisco and the state law. So the state law, SB 54, sets a minimal floor, right? It sets a floor, not a ceiling, about how local law enforcement should be or should not be collaborating with ICE. Here in San Francisco, we have a better policy than that, and like I mentioned, that's completely within our prerogative to do because it sets a floor and not a ceiling. And so what's good for Orange County may not be good for San Francisco, and so that's why we encourage different localities to decide what works for them, and this is the compromise that was reached back in 2016. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, go ahead.
I also just want to echo what Member Duffy was saying about public comment. I think it's really important to allow the members of the public, especially the young people in the public, to be able to speak, because as a person that's worked with young people to go to City Hall to advocate, it's very difficult to speak in front of a lot of people, let alone people who are older than you and people who have a lot of power. And so I just really want to reiterate that we should never interject when there is public comment.
And I just want to also echo Member Duffy's comments, and Member Chan's comments. I also want to just take a moment to acknowledge the members of the public who came out tonight and spoke and shared their stories of how this ballot measure will impact them and their communities, and the fearlessness and the bravery, and the speaking truth to power tonight. I know that was not easy. I just also want to say I hear you, and many of us up here hear you. And I wholeheartedly oppose this ballot measure, and I will do everything to oppose it if and when it ends up on the ballot, and I will do everything I can to make sure this party opposes it.
I just want to thank the members here to keep this debate on the policy level as opposed to the personal level. I sat through about an hour and a half of public testimony today from an incredible amount of rhetoric that I haven't seen, quite honestly, since Mary Jo was the chair of this party. She was attacked and vilified for the same type of things, not being democratic enough, being aligned with the Republican Party. I've seen it with Gavin Newsom. He was aligned with Governor Schwarzenegger at the time. Willie Brown was aligned with Pete Wilson at the time. Now Angela Alioto is Trump incarnate in San Francisco. At a certain point, folks, at a certain point, you got to get down to what's the policy, okay? Stop the name calling. I know you're upset, but you progressive community, you stand on the shoulders of Angela Alioto and the work that she's given to San Francisco. You will be too young to know it, and you're going to know one day I'm speaking truth on that. And if she's bringing this up, it's beyond the mayor's race now. She's getting nothing out of this except a black eye tonight. Okay? If she's bringing it up, it's because she cares about it. That's the way she's fought her entire life in San Francisco. So I just want to thank you for keeping it on the policy level. Getting back to the public comment point, I don't believe that Member Alioto was trying to discourage public comment. In fact, I think she was asking if this body would change its policy so that public comment aligned more closely with the agenda item in order so that it could be heard similar to the Board of Supervisors. I didn't hear her say that anybody would deny comment.
Member Mahoney.
I just want to say that I feel like there's a lot of talk about rhetoric tonight. And I think when we're talking about making comparisons, that it is fair when someone uses the rhetoric of the opposing party to draw those comparisons. I think that it's completely fair. I think it also, there is a certain amount of, I think, disillusionment with what is happening tonight because we're talking about a bill that didn't even gather enough signatures, right? A ballot measure that didn't even gather enough signatures to get onto the ballot. So, but I do think it is important for the public to voice their opinions about what is happening on this body for people who are elected officials that are supposed to be representing them as a member of the Democratic Party. And I think that if we're talking about saving people's lives, if we're talking about really looking at who are the victims here, we've heard time and time again that this legislation, that this amendment would not be helping the victims, that the victims would not be helped by these amendments. If we're talking about saving lives, maybe we should be talking about the people who are actually being killed and dying, where we can actually make a difference. And I think that if we want to make a difference, we should be looking at things like police reform, police accountability, and how, it is clearly not the immigrants in our communities who are doing the majority of the attacks and killings that are happening. It's been proven time and again that it is native-born people, and many of whom have the power of the office of being a police officer. So I think that we need to really, when we talk about saving people's lives, take a look at that and really think about what it is we're trying to achieve. And lastly, I think that there is a certain grace to being able to say, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. And acknowledge the fact that maybe something was, you thought of something differently, and now hearing from the public that you have had time to reconsider, I think you would garner a lot of respect from just taking a step back instead of continuing to sink your foot into the ground. Thank you.
Member Lowe.
Thank you. I just want to appreciate every comment that has been made and to the public who's been here today and for sharing on all sides of the issues. But I know how scary it must be to come forward and to speak on this issue. I think to go back to the policy level and why we need to be focusing on the policy, I think this is why we're having a discussion, because there is a lot of misinformation out there. And just from hearing from the public comment today, I think we do need to get more educated about what exactly is at stake with this ballot initiative. So I just really want to understand from a policy level, just exactly beyond just lifting the time period in which a conviction happens, what else this ordinance proves to do. I think my concern is that, fundamentally the issue, I think for me, is that the immigration system should not be embedded or entangled with the criminal justice system. I think we keep talking about this as if people who are convicted do not actually go through serving time. They do. They go through trials, they get their due process, and they go and they serve their time. That's what happens with the law. So I think for me, it's kind of like a double jeopardy to actually entangle people in the immigration justice system when you've done something maybe you really do regret. Maybe you've restored yourself. Maybe you rehabilitated. We have stories like that all the time. Eddie Zhang is a perfect example from our community. And I just fear that we're just looking at this in the wrong way. And I just want to call on both Member Alioto and the presenter just to clarify just exactly what is this trying to accomplish, and if there's any scenario in which, if this ballot initiative does pass, that we will inadvertently impact any immigrants that are kind of caught in this dragnet. So I don't know in what particular order, Member Alioto or with the presenter, Sayar Hussein, if I can call on them just to explain.
Member Alioto, and then
there's a microphone right there.
This ordinance, again, I read it from the ordinance and I handed it out. This ordinance only pertains to someone who is arrested for a violent felony and convicted. Then the governmental entities would have, in other words, they would no longer be protected by the sanctuary law, as is the state law. The second prong of it is a second felony, murder, rape, or mayhem. If the person comes in for a second one, when they have been already convicted of one and been in prison, then the government will not protect them under the sanctuary law. It is only those two instances. It's basically serial violent felons. And the people, the community that I have talked to, have come to me with this. By the way, I've been discussing this for 3 years since Supervisor Avalos, and I'm sorry, Supervisor Campos, I thought you were the sponsor of it. And I did not know you were an undocumented person until just recently, in the last week. Especially I've never heard that. But having said that, Avalos, Campos, both supervisors, I never spoke to John Campos. Can I just say one thing? All of this is about immigration reform. And if we, the city of San Francisco, really wanted to do something, we would make every single non-violent felon, undocumented person a citizen of the city and county of San Francisco, so that they had all the benefits, they could vote, they would have every benefit a citizen has just in the city of San Francisco. I promise you it would be one government entity at least doing something about the horrible immigration lack of reform. And they would grow from there. San Francisco's always spoken out of the box. If we made every undocumented immigrant, as of the date of the legislation, a citizen of San Francisco, we'd be doing something positive for the first time in the last 50 years for immigration.
The one thing that I would say is going back to what I think Member King was asking, and I think what you were asking, and I think Member Alioto noted this, that the main thing that this does is that it takes away the 5 years and 7 years. And what I would say to you is those of us who have been working on this for many years, that the reason why those are there is that if you committed a violent or serious felony within that period, and you were convicted, you are in state prison. There isn't an issue of 70, 80-year-old former felons, geriatric felons committing violent crime in any of these jurisdictions. That's not the issue. So from our perspective, the 5 and 7 years doesn't really make a difference. And yet that's precisely what the main thing it does. And if you believe that that warrants a change, then go for it. The one thing that I would end with this note, there is actually, for those of you who want to know how sanctuary jurisdictions are doing, there's actually a professor at UC San Diego that actually using ICE data, and it's actually, you can find it online, did a report on how sanctuary jurisdictions fare relative to non-sanctuary jurisdictions on the issue of crimes. Okay, and it's actually Professor Tom K. Wong. He wrote a report in January of 2017 that looked at all these sanctuary jurisdictions, and what he found is that crime is actually lower in those jurisdictions, 35.5 fewer crimes in those jurisdictions per 10,000 people compared to non-sanctuary jurisdictions. Not rhetoric, facts. Okay.
May I
One
answer?
final point.
Thank you. I'm going to answer Member Lowe's question. First, I just want to clarify that this whole murder, rape, mayhem thing, I'm not sure where it's coming from because the law itself says violent or serious. Now, violent and serious are specified in section 667.5 and 1192.7 of the Penal Code. It totals about 50 offenses altogether. It's not just murder, rape, mayhem. Secondly, because there's this whole theme running through tonight, I do want to tell you about a client of ours here at the Asian Law Caucus. His name is PJ I. He moved to the U.S. at the age of 5 from Cambodia. He was fleeing the Khmer Rouge with his family. At the age of 7, he saw his cousin murdered in Stockton at the schoolyard massacre, a school shooting. When he was 14 years old, he was the youngest person in California to be convicted to life in prison. And that was because he got involved in a street gang, he committed a murder, and he ended up going to prison. He's now about 38 years old. He was commuted finally by Governor Brown, and he got out this past year. He spent over a year in ICE detention, and he finally was released. They're trying to deport him to Cambodia right now. And so I ask you, if we lift the 5 and 7 year protections and make it possible for anybody to go back, can we judge a 38-year-old man by the actions of a 14-year-old?
One final, we're going to move on to other items. This is just a discussion item. Member Anderson, you wanted to, I think you're president of a club. So here's the mic.
Thank you, Chair Campos. I am Kat Anderson. I'm president of the City Democratic Club and associate member, so thank you for letting me speak. I came here because I wanted to learn. This is a very supported participation, and I try to be agnostic about that participation. I believe that we are all Democrats here, and we are different shades, of course, you know. But we put people first. That's why we're here. The other thing that I've been sort of noticing in the last few years of serving on the Democratic County Central Committee, both as an elected member and as a proxy, is sometimes there's this generational divide. You know, I'm 54 years old, and Angela's a little bit older than I am. And, you know, frankly, we come from different backgrounds. And I have a 23-year-old son and a 21-year-old daughter that I learn from every day, that they inspire me. You know, my daughter especially is a feminist, and she just started with the Representation Project, and I'm so proud of her. She's a Stanford University student, and my son goes to the University of Virginia, Charlottesville, where a horrible demonstration that ended in people getting killed. So I have much to learn from the young people. Some of you guys aren't much older than my children, and I want to thank you for participating. Having said that, I think that we don't try hard enough to understand one another. I know that you're scared and I know that you're angry, but Angela here has done great things for people who need help. She deserves our respect. I don't know if you guys know this, but she is the highest vote getter actually elected to the Democratic County Central Committee. I believe she got like 23,000 votes or something like that. So she represents a constituency in San Francisco. You know, there are us oldsters here who are Democrats who care. Okay, so I don't think it's a good idea to attack her. I think what you should do is try to understand where she's coming from. And I do have a question. I believe that if a undocumented person commits a felony after they serve their sentence, they're supposed to be deported. So what are they doing back in this country committing crime again? Okay? You should be asking yourself that. So I would really appreciate if we would all try to continue to learn from one another. And I want to thank everybody for their service, most especially Member Alvin.
Member Maxwell wanted to say something.
Yes, I was wondering if we could postpone our committee reports until.
Yes.
Great, thank you.
Okay. We're now. Thank you. We're now going to go on to item number 7. And I want to again thank everyone who's sat here and has, number 9, my apologies, it's late, for your comments, for sticking with us. So item 9 is a resolution in support of abolishing U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, and it's a resolution that has been introduced by Member Groff.
Hi, thank you. I'll keep this short. I think everyone knows what ICE is and the horrific things that they have done, along with the Department of Homeland Security under President Trump. I wrote this resolution because a few weeks ago, on top of all the disgusting, horrible stories and news that's coming out along the border, I don't know if everyone knows this, but my grandpa was interned during World War II. As a Japanese American, he was born in this country, and so I went to where he was interned a few weeks ago, and was at one of the camps, and learned that basically the Department of Homeland Security and ICE is essentially copying the plans of the concentration camps where 110,000 Japanese Americans were held to hold these immigrants seeking refuge. So with that, I wanted to introduce my measure to abolish ICE, and also with co-sponsors Galata and Francis Shea.
Second.
Seconded by Member Duffy.
Move the item.
Move the item.
But this is, I know. Okay, I'm just gonna say that, this is a bad idea for our party. There are a lot of counties that are trying to go from red to blue. There are a lot of Democrats out there, a lot of Democrats, our people, who are fighting issues that are germane to their communities. And abolishing ICE is feeding into the Republican rhetoric. It's going to hand them a victory this midterm election. Our party needs to be focused and needs to be strategic about it. The choices that we choose. I know we're in San Francisco, we're in a bubble. We get to run free with progressive ideas like this. But this is akin to saying, let's abolish the military. Let's abolish the police department. We know ICE doesn't work. We don't, okay, you're responsible. But I'm just saying it's a bad idea. This is not a good idea. I don't recommend that we vote on this tonight. Feel free to. This is a Democratic Party. I'm just speaking my truth.
I want to give Member Ross an opportunity to respond, and then Member Mandelman.
So I would like to respond by my measure that, or my resolution says that in addition to 150 elected officials around the country, so this is Senators Gillibrand, Senators Harris, I believe State Senator Scott Wiener has signed on to this that I mentioned in my bill, so it's not just us crazy San Franciscans signing on to it. Also, ICE was founded as a new agency. It didn't exist before 2003. It was directly in response to the Patriot Act. So it did, so I'm not saying, completely get rid of it. I am putting it up to the Board of Supervisors. No, I'm sorry. Yes, abolish ICE. What I meant is, I don't say, anyway, what I'm saying is that what existed before ICE was a different immigration, and what we need to do is demilitarize our current immigration, and like I think it was Member Lowe earlier said, is we shouldn't conflate our immigration system with the criminal justice system, which is what ICE is doing.
Member Mandelman.
I actually just have a question as a new supervisor, because I know there was a period when we had, I'm not sure if we still have a majority of board supervisors on this body, and so members who were also supervisors were wary of voting on things that might when it comes to the board of supervisors. So I just have a question. I support it, but did we worry about that?
No. Can I respond to that? Where that is, thank you, Supervisor Mandelman, already hitting the ground running. Where that is an issue is in an appeal where there is a quasi or judicial role that you play. But something like this, there's something wrong with you taking a position. And what I would say, and I understand the point, but I actually think that the idea of viability actually cuts the other way. I actually think that there are enough mainstream folks in this party that are supporting this, and I actually think that if you want to take back the House, you need to mobilize the base, and I think the base is rightly going to be mobilized by this. It doesn't mean that there isn't another agency that can be created, but I actually think that it's in the interest of proper enforcement of immigration to make sure that that agency is not ICE. And it's something that is actually has a different approach to immigration. Member Alexander, Member Baraka, and then Member Schick.
So I think inevitably with this conversation, people bring up, well, what's the alternative, whatever. I think this resolution does not need to address every single thing about what we need to do, what is the exact right. This is, we're putting a flag in the ground and saying this is where we stand, and let's start the debate and let's start the creation of a new, of how we want immigration to live in our country. But ICE is not it, and I think that we can all agree that ICE is not it. That's it.
Member Baraka, and then Member Schick.
I would just like to be added as a co-sponsor.
Thank you.
Me too, Member Schick.
Would the maker of the sponsor of the resolution add in just a simple line that an alternative agency be created that promotes the reforms that we all find valuable to the people that need to be served? Can we put it to a vote? I'm making a motion that we make an amendment. Is there a second?
So there's a motion to amend the resolution. Is there a second to that motion? Second by Member Aliotto.
So I'd like to move that we add in the second, the final be it further resolved that the Democratic Party urges Central School Board of Supervisors to pass a resolution in support of a call to abolish ICE and to promote an alternative agency that will pursue the values that we hold dear to ourselves.
It's getting late, so I'm going to ask for a roll call on that motion. So maybe a show of hands. Those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. In favor of the motion to amend along the lines that Member Shea indicated? Okay, so we have 2 in favor. Those opposed, please raise your hand. Okay, I think the name, and any abstentions? Okay, so Ting, Chu, who else is Mom.
I'm going to abstain for Rachel.
Okay, Rachel, Norton abstains, but I think the noes have it. So on the resolution as in its original form, let's have a motion. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Nay. Any abstentions? Fewer abstains. Okay. 2 nays, and that's Aliotto and Shea, and Tom Shea. Great. Thank you very much, Member Roth. If we can now go on to the next item number 10, which is a resolution supporting the decriminalization of immigrant communities and condemning any action by San Francisco Democratic Party leadership to weaken protections for the immigrant community. And this is an item that has been brought forward with Member De Jesus.
Also, like a member of Tiva Gupta signed on as a co-sponsor.
I think there are a number of folks who are want to be added. If you want to be added as a co-sponsor, please raise your hand. Which one is this? Number 10. Okay, so for the record, so Alexander, Mahogany, Lavada, Lowe, well, okay, 10. Anyone else?
Anyone else?
Added as a co-sponsor. Duffy, Maxwell, Baraka.
Is the item moved?
Okay, so motion.
Move. Second.
Motion by Duffy, second by Gawada.
Call the question.
Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Opposed. Aliotto, Tom Shea. Any abstentions? The item passes. Thank you very much. Okay. Well, Chu and Ma. So Chu and Ma abstain. So sorry. The next item 11 is resolution proposing California State Assembly Bill 84. Member Gawada.
All right, we are running out of time, but I was asked to put this item on agenda by our dear friend Penny Kelly. I do everything Penny tells me to do. Penny, did you want to just speak to this for 1 minute? Just to let people know why this is bad and we should oppose it. Thank you, Penny.
I do not use microphones.
Live stream.
This was brought up at the executive board of the Democratic Party. And at the executive board, we did a lot of very interesting things. And one of them was to pass a resolution to really stop superdelegates, to make the Democratic Party more grassroots. It was extremely important to the people there. And then we came to the legislation committee, which I'm on, and they had this bill. And I called it an obscenity. It was an obscene bill, and you know that I know obscenities. What this bill was doing, and it does have some good things in it. It says that if anybody gives you money, because they want to collect money, the caucuses of the Democratic and Republican Party money to run people for office. So they will do that. But what it doesn't tell you is that they will be the people who run the people. And they will be the ones who endorse the people they're going to run. Therefore, taking it out of the hands of the rank and file, it's a piece of please vote against it.
So I will move on this item.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Ting, Ma, Chu, Wiener, Norton, Tom Shea. Okay, the item passes. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
With respect to item 12, new business, I just want to note that I will have a resolution that deals with some anti-LGBT actions that are being taken at the House of Representatives, and specifically protections against discrimination by some vendors in the federal government. So I'll be bringing that resolution forward at the next meeting. Any other new business? Member Day 2.
So for consideration at the next meeting is a resolution amending policies and procedures manual to enforce the $500 campaign contribution limits to the policies and procedures manual, which is said. Vice Chair De Jesus will of course discuss with, we'll call for a bylaws committee to discuss before then.
Colleagues, any other new business? I know that there has been a motion, unless there's any objection, I'm not going to have item 5 discussed. Seeing no other business before the body, I want to again thank you everyone for being here, for your comments. The meeting is adjourned.